the test server, her
Mm-hmm.
possibilities. Like she's gonna be awesome for stealing objectives, because not only do you attack your enemy players, you also attack the objectives that you're attacking. So someone showed like an example with Baron. Well, any of them. You can do it with all of them. But like with Baron or Drag, you can throw out her R while the enemy team's on Drag or Baron, and then they'll start attacking or keep attacking Baron or Dragon. But the thing is, since you R them, you get the objective for it if they finish it, because they're under your spell.
Hell yeah.
So yeah, she's gonna be an excellent objective stealer. And her res thing is just stupid. Like I said, you get a res like every 20 seconds. It's retarded. She's gonna be broken. Besides that, she's actually not that useful. It's just those abilities are gonna be so strong. I don't foresee it being fair. She'll probably be banned like every game. I mean, she's a cool looking champ. I don't know if you've seen her. Like, she's badass.
No, I haven't. Okay, send me your link.
She's kind of like a goth chick. So you should see what she looks like.
Send me a link or send me a picture.
I don't. I'm getting it.
Okay.
Renata Glax. It's also her walk. She walks like a bad bitch. So here's like the face of her. And here's more like what she looks like in the game. But yes, like I said, people also like the way she walks. I mean, honestly, when it comes to like like theme in a champ and aesthetic wise, yeah, she's done really well. They really like made her very well. Yeah, she walks with one hand in her pocket and kind of struts down the lane, and then she pulls out a pistol.
Oh, nice.
So she's a badass looking champ, but she's gonna be obnoxious, come landing in actual gaming.
Okay, bye.
Bye bye.
So we've got Derek in Michigan who wants to talk a little bit about the Rapture coming soon. How you doing, Derek? You're on with Matt and John.
Thanks for having me, guys. How you guys doing?
Well, not too bad.
Yeah, not too bad. Pretty good here.
It's good to hear it. Yeah, I would just like to talk about the coming rapture. I mean, with all that's been happening in the world, it's kind of crazy that this is the only disease in history that ever shut down the entire planet. And you know how the Bible speaks of wars and rumors of wars and pestilence and all this other end time stuff. I mean, it's all coming to pass. So my question is just, I mean, what are you guys going to do when the rapture actually comes? I mean, will you guys believe that God exists then, or will you believe what the government tells you, which is probably going to be something about aliens?
First of all, you don't think that this is
That is
actually the
not shut
first
down.
time that we've experienced like war and disease and everything run rampant. I mean, the Spanish flu of 1917 and 1918 was pretty prevalent across the entire world. The
Lasted
bubonic
3 years.
plague.
Lasted 3 years. The world hasn't
Yeah.
shut down, by the way.
No.
Otherwise,
No, it
John and
hasn't.
I wouldn't be here doing a show.
But I mean, that's just one example of how all of these things that seem to be coalescing together and are signs of the rapture. I mean, these my point is that these things have happened all throughout time. So I'm kind of wondering what distinguishes this particular set of events from previous events that match the exact same end times prophecies.
Yeah, I was in.
It's global. It's the whole world. It's just not like one country. It's the entire
What's the whole world? New Zealand's already dealt with COVID and moved on. It's not the whole world, and the whole world hasn't shut down. Meanwhile, I was in Oakland, California for the last attempted rapture that Harold Camping was claiming. So if you take a look at it throughout history, on a regular basis, Christian eschatologists have been claiming that the rapture is imminent. And every time they've been wrong. Now, if it turns out they're right this time, then I will be surprised. No, I don't believe just what the government tells me. The time to believe in something is after there's evidence for it. And so the time to believe that a rapture has occurred is after there's actually evidence for it. Until then, it's just a bunch of doomsayer stuff from people who can't demonstrate the truth of anything they believe with regard to their God.
Well, you don't consider the Bible evidence?
No.
Yeah, so the Bible contains claims which would count as anecdotal evidence, but it's not like the Bible is sufficient evidence to justify belief in a God or anything. Otherwise, we'd have to say the same thing for the Quran and the Bhagavad Gita and whatever other ancient holy texts people want to point to. The evidence for God has yet to be demonstrated.
Well, I just place my faith on the Bible. I believe the Bible's true. Everything in it.
Everything in it? Everything in it. Everything in it's true. Have you got a preferred Bible?
Yeah.
Which one?
The Bible.
No. Which version of the Bible? I got 5 of them sitting next to me. I was just going to have you
like
pick.
The James Bible?
Well, it would be King James, but I just didn't know if you had a preferred Bible, like the NIV or.
Yeah, my bad.
Do you think that it's okay to own people as property?
No, I don't.
Because the Bible says it's okay.
Yeah.
And you just said that you thought
back then it was. I don't know.
No. You said you thought everything in the Bible was true, and I asked you if it was okay to own people's property, and you said no, but the Bible says it is.
Yeah, what I'm saying is I think it was true back then.
So once upon a time, it was okay to own people as property and beat them? That was okay once upon a time?
Maybe back then it was a different time back then.
Well, I realize it was a different time. I know how fucking time works. The question is, was it okay? Was it morally permissible to own people and beat them?
Not now, but back then, who knows? Until we get a time machine.
What do you mean, who knows? What do you mean, who knows?
Sure.
Let's jump in a time machine, and I'll take you back. Would you willingly be a slave in those ancient times under the rules laid out in Exodus 21 and Leviticus 25? Would you willingly be a slave under those rules?
Oh, no, if I lived back then, I wouldn't be a slave.
No, you would be. You don't get any choice in it. You're bought and sold. You're property.
I'm curious, why do you think you wouldn't be a slave?
But anyway, I didn't really call to talk about slavery. I called to talk about the rapture.
I know. Do you think men and women should be considered equal? Because the Bible doesn't.
Yeah, that's the way God made it.
Do you think that there was actually a Tower of Babel where God came down and confounded all the languages? Because that ain't true.
Well, I don't know if it was true because I wasn't there.
You don't get to say that. You just told us you believe everything in the Bible's true, which means you now have to stand by the Tower of Babel and a global flood and trying to get every fucking animal on the planet into one big ass boat and every other ridiculous anti-science thing. The fact that Genesis gets the order of creation events wrong. You now have to stand by all of that. You have to stand by Abraham attempting to sacrifice Isaac and then stopping. You have to stand by Samson losing his strength when his hair gets cut. You have to stand by all of it because you had the audacity to suggest that everything in the Bible is true when I'll bet you don't even know what's in the Bible. Have you read it?
The only things I know about the Bible is what I was taught in church.
Yeah, so you haven't even read all of it, have you?
No, I listened to my pastor speak.
Yeah, maybe you should stop doing that. Maybe you should start investigating things for yourself. Because I used to be somebody who just listened to my pastor. I was going to be a pastor. And then what happened was I read it for myself. And I also learned about the nature of evidence and science and how we can know reasonably what is and isn't true, and how the stuff in the Bible, like talking snakes and donkeys, isn't likely to be true. And that you should not believe that people have been resurrected from the dead until you have evidence for it, not just someone claiming it in a book. Who wrote Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John?
I know those guys didn't write it.
Yeah. And so, but do we know who did? Do we know who did?
Not to my knowledge.
Not to anybody's knowledge. Those books we have no original copies, so we don't know what the originals say. We have no idea who wrote those books. And so what we have are copies of translations of copies of an oral tradition that was handed down over a period of time. If somebody came to you and told you that they would like for you to give them 10 to 20% of your income for the rest of your life, and that they want you to live by their rules, and when you ask, why should I, they hand you a book that is copies of translation of copies of stories that are told, and you have no way of verifying who wrote them or investigating any fact within them, are you going to do it?
Well, is it going toward a good cause?
What is a good cause? If it's just going to the church, that's not. See, here's the problem. In the United States, where churches have de facto tax exempt status, churches don't have to open their books. They don't have to tell people how much money they're bringing in. They don't have to show how much money goes elsewhere. And so while some churches do operate charities, you don't know how much of your dollar gets to the people in actual need. Sometimes the overhead can be as much as 98 cents per dollar, which means only 2 cents of what you're giving is going out to the people in need. But you'll never know what the actual amount is, because churches, unlike other nonprofit organizations, don't have to open their books, which is why the Mormon church can be rich as fuck and own Coca-Cola and hotels and everything else. And the Catholic Church can have magnificent works of arts clogging up a big empty freaking building and charge people to come see it instead of actually feeding the homeless. Do you know how many homeless people? Do you know that we could end poverty and homelessness throughout most of the world just by liquidating the Catholic Church, using those buildings to house people who need places to live, and giving that money to support the effort?
No, I did not know that.
Yeah, granted, I don't think you're a Catholic, but so you probably don't have as much.
No, I'm born and raised Christian.
Well, Catholics are Christian?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm just saying, you would probably be on my side if I decided to say, hey, let's liquidate the Catholic Church and the Mormon Church. You'd be okay with that because you're not one of those denominations, right?
Right.
Cool. We appreciate your support. I don't know, John, I kind of dominated that one. Sorry, I was having fun. Did you want to talk to Derek about something?
Well, so I know that he was really wanting to talk about the rapture. Obviously, I'm not in agreement about the whole Bible evidence kind of thing. You were saying that just basically all the Bible.
I just gotta say, I do not know what I disagreed to, but I feel like I just sold my soul away.
That's good, because you don't have a soul, so you don't have to worry about selling it.
Yeah.
Oh, but we do.
Oh, no. Okay, I'll let John handle this. Please prove to John that we have a soul.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I think John had a question for me first.
That's a nice
dodge. Now I'm more interested in your evidence for a soul.
Don't make this personal. I'm not nice.
Well, near-death experiences, people who have actually died and come back to life.
So how do you know that those experiences were actually had while they were supposedly dead, and not just in the space around brain death or whatever you want to consider them to be dead, at whatever point you want to consider them to be dead, because we really don't even understand like what the brain goes through exactly during these times. We know that it's very traumatic, and that that they are likely to have what they feel like are very religious experiences. You can't actually state any kind of evidence that shows that these people were having these experiences while they were clinically dead.
Yeah, when your brain wakes up.
You got the witnesses, which you can ask, and you also got the doctor who verifies that the patient was dead.
So, Derek, no doctor can verify that a patient died, went to heaven, and came back. That's impossible to verify. There's no witness that can verify that a patient died, went to heaven, and then came back. What we can do is look at the claims of people who claim to have died and gone to heaven and come back. On a number of occasions, they've admitted that they lied. On other occasions, there's no evidence that they can do it. And we've tested near-death experiences. So, like, for the people who claim that they're floating above their body and everything else, you can put a sign on top of a cabinet in the room that can only be seen from someone floating above the room. It can't be seen by anybody down there. And you can put a note on that sign. Curiously, we've done that. To date, no one has ever been able to tell us what's on the note.
Yeah. Well, what about the cases where the spirit lifts up and you can see what everybody's doing? I'm talking about those cases.
There's been no cases where anybody can demonstrate what you're saying. Here's where people get confused. If my brain is starved of oxygen as I'm heading towards death, it starts to malfunction. If I die and I'm revived through CPR, they bring out the paddles, whatever else, my brain gets back to normal. And the first thing my brain needs to do is say, wow, there's a gap in my timeline. What happened? And curiously, we human beings fill that gap with stories that are very similar, but they're only similar to other stories that we've heard. Or the religious people don't tend to have, it's not like Catholics see Buddha or Buddhists see Jesus as a norm. People tend to see the religious iconography they're associated with. Catholics tend to see Catholic iconography. Baptists tend to see Baptist iconography. So it's much the same way that if you look at alien abduction stories, once upon a time back in the 40s and 50s, aliens were robots or big monsters or anything else. Eventually we get to a point where they're all almond eyes, the round big head over the top, the thing that you would expect after seeing Close Encounters of the Third Kind. All of a sudden, stories begin to merge. As soon as they start getting reported, all of a sudden people are reporting the same things. Do you believe, Derek, that people are being abducted by aliens with almond eyes and big gray heads? Do you think that's happening?
No.
Okay. Do you realize that the evidence for alien abduction is not only more accurate and reliable and less preposterous than the evidence for a soul or a god? Because with aliens, we're not claiming anything beyond the natural. With souls and gods, we're claiming something supernatural. So by definition, alien abductions are more plausible than a god, and yet you don't believe alien abductions, but you will believe near-death experiences.
Wow, well, thanks for the information. You guys have really given me a lot to think about. I'm sorry we didn't get to discuss what our nation first called for, how the rapture in the Bible links up to what's happening today. But yeah, you guys give me a lot of things. Thanks.
Sure, thanks. And just so you get an answer on your rapture question, if a rapture happens and is verifiable, then I will believe it. Absolutely.
So you're saying when the rapture happens, because I hate to say this, Matt, you're a good man, but you're going to be left behind, obviously.
Depends on who you talk to. I have a pastor.
When the rapture does happen, you will turn to Christ and won't take the mark?
Oh, no. I won't turn to Christ at all, but I'll definitely believe that the rapture happened. Meanwhile, there are pastor friends of mine who believe once saved, always saved, who think I am going to be raptured. And that'll be a bizarre set of circumstances.
Yeah, I'll be raptured too.
Yeah.
How old are you, Derek?
I'm 30.
30.
I'm 30.
So how old, like, at what age do you think you would finally say, you know what, like, if at 40, by 40 the rapture hasn't happened, will you stop believing? Or how about 50 or 60? At what age will your prediction about the rapture finally be voided?
Wow, that's a really good question. I've never been asked that before. I would say about 45, because it's about 5 years before I hit 50, and then it's all downhill from there.
Well, thanks, because I'm 51, so, bite me for saying it's all downhill from there. But I tell you what,
how old you were. I'm sorry.
I'll tell you what, Derek, set yourself, do you use like Google Calendar?
I have an Alexa.
You can do that. You can go set yourself a reminder for your like 45th, 46th birthday, and then reach out and call us again then, if we're still on the air, or send an email acknowledging that your predictions about the rapture were the same nonsense, not true thing that's happened with everybody else who's predicted a rapture, and that now you're free of superstitious beliefs.
Yeah, you're right. I guess I won't figure that out till I'm 45. But yeah, thanks for the call, guys. I really appreciate you guys taking my call.
Yep. Thank you. Appreciate it.
seen too much of this.
We have loads and loads and loads and loads and loads. But we're going to start
sure do.
with Zachary in Alabama. You're on with Johnny and Matt.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it says here, the ability of an atheist to correctly assess evidence for God from your perspective, it seems like they're assessing evidence incorrectly.
Right.
So, first of all,
My first,
this isn't about how an atheist assesses evidence, because I used to be a Christian, and I was a Christian when I began assessing the evidence.
I don't know. I can't really assess that, whether or not that's true, because, there are many Christians who claim to be Christians, but they aren't. So,
Okay, so why should, well, hang on. Are you suggesting that I didn't actually sincerely believe?
I don't know.
Okay. How do you know what I believe now?
What do you mean?
Grave is silent,
What do I believe now?
buried in all the things.
Am I really an atheist?
You said you are.
I also said I used to be a Christian, but you don't seem to want to believe that part, because that part may conflict with your narrative that you're getting ready to do.
Well, no, within the
It
Christian
seems
worldview,
like-
there are people who claim to be Christian.
You do realize, okay, go ahead, make your case.
Yeah.
My first question is, do you think it's possible that Christianity is true?
I have no idea if it's possible or not. I don't know that it's impossible. Both possibility and impossibility are claims that would need to be demonstrated, and I don't think they have. I'm not concerned whether or not it's possible or not. I'm concerned whether or not it's actually true.
All right. Well, let's imagine that it is possible, and then certain verses in the Bible would also be true, such as 1 Corinthians 2, verse 14, that says, "The natural man does not receive the spiritual things of God." Verses in Proverbs, such as, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." And other verses like, "The wisdom of the world is foolishness to God." If these verses are true, then it's possible that atheists have this inherent disadvantage at seeing the truth, because their presuppositions and their attitudes prevent them from doing so.
Yeah,
By judging the evidence as
that's not the way that's not the way logic or reasoning works. An argument is either valid in structure and sound, irrespective of what the individual's biases are. Either you can construct a sound argument for something, or you can't. Can you construct a sound argument for God? Because if your whole
Also,
if your whole point is to say that the wisdom of God is foolishness to the world, as a way of saying, hey, if somebody says logical reasoning is X, but I have this God-based belief and I don't have to pay attention to that, then we're never going to agree. We have nothing to talk about.
on top of that, if we assume the Bible is true, then atheists would, by definition, be wrong or insufficient. We should believe it. Is that what you're saying?
Then you're not enough you.
I'm saying it's totally possible that Christianity is true, and that by your presuppositions,
It's totally possible.
But how do you?
What presupposition do I have that's getting in the way of me accepting that Christianity is true? And first of all, you saying that Christianity is possibly true doesn't mean that it is. We're just saying that for the sake of argument. My only concern is that it's actually true.
My argument is, if you rely on your ability to judge the evidence, you're presupposing that Christianity is false, because if it were true,
No, I'm not.
then your methods would be flawed from the beginning.
No, that's not true. I don't have to presuppose Christianity is false. All I have to do is be willing to work with logical reasoning. Now, if your claim is that if Christianity is true, then logical reasoning is no longer reliable, then that's a different thing to discuss.
Well, assuming that you can only use logical reasoning is to assume that there are no other paths to truth, but Christianity says there are. So that's why I say you presuppose.
I don't care. I don't care what Christianity says, because it isn't true until it's demonstrated that it's true. And
But you're
Christianity,
relying on your own methods to see if it's true.
And
If Christianity is true, then your whole process is flawed. Do you recognize
No,
that?
no. That's the whole point. Even if Christianity is true, logical reasoning is still valid and sound.
Killing spree.
I agree.
Okay. So you don't get to say that if Christianity is true, my whole methodology is flawed, because my whole methodology is logical reasoning. Is there a logically sound argument for Christianity?
A logically sound argument for Christianity. Well, you said that logic. I mean, I do agree with you that logic is still sound. It's just that within the Christian framework, it's not necessarily logic that brings you to God. I mean, in the Bible it says that faith comes by grace, revelation. I mean, you're only relying on logic that you can understand.
No. You don't.
Mind.
No, sir. That suggests there's logic that's beyond our comprehension. When you just talked about
There
faith.
is.
No, sir. You just talked about faith and grace, neither of which are logic.
Well, they're not logical to you.
They're not logic. So here,
I
let me
didn't say they were logic.
let me ask you the same question we asked somebody else. Is it possible for me to believe something based on faith, and that thing I believe is wrong, that is not true?
Yes.
And it's also possible for me to believe something based on faith, and that thing is true.
Yes.
How do we tell which things are true or not?
Is that your question?
Yeah, I was going to add more and I stopped. How do we? So if faith can lead me to true beliefs and faith can lead me to false beliefs, then faith is not a reliable pathway to truth, and faith cannot tell me which of two positions is true. So what method must I use to determine which of those positions is true?
Wait, so you said that faith can sometimes lead you to a true belief or to truth? Is that what you said?
You can believe something that's true based on faith, and you can believe something that's not true based on faith. And so if faith as a method can lead you to something true and something not true, then faith is no method to get to truth.
Well, to say that faith is no method to get to truth is to say that the Bible is false, because it does say that faith can get you to truth.
Fine, then I will
point.
assert that if the Bible says that faith, no. Here, let me back up. I didn't say faith couldn't lead you to truth. I said that faith could lead you to something that's true and something that's not true, which means that faith is not a reliable path to truth. Simply saying, I believe faith doesn't tell us whether or not it's true.
Right, faith wouldn't work in all circumstances. Like I could have faith.
Correct. So faith on its own is useless.
Well, it depends on the context.
No, it doesn't depend on context. Faith on its own is useless as a path to truth. Because if I believe something based on faith, that doesn't tell me whether or not what I believe is true. So faith is not the measure of whether or not something is true.
I'd like to hear what you think that context is. What's the context that you think makes faith reliable?
I mean, I could have faith in a lot of things. Like, I could have faith that I'll get $1 million tomorrow. But faith in God is a bit different, because within the Christian framework, it is faith that leads you to truth. And so to say that faith is not reliable is to already assume.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah, so what you're doing is question begging. You're beginning by assuming that Christianity is true. And if Christianity is true, then faith becomes a path to truth, while you've already acknowledged that faith is not a reliable path. You don't get to do that.
Can I make a point? Make my point?
Sure.
So my point is, like, you can't really exclude certain paths of truth, like faith.
Yes.
Like the Bible says things like.
Yeah. Why can't you?
Yes.
Why can't you?
Here, hang on. I got a perfect, easy, Zach. Is a coin flip a reliable pathway to discerning the truth?
And that's a strange question. I would say no. So
I would say no too, because let's say I've got two choices. I either think I'm going to get $1 million tomorrow or I'm not. So I flip a coin, and I say if it's heads, I'm going to get $1 million today. So I did a coin toss, and I have no reason to think that led me to the truth, right?
right.
Okay. Can you demonstrate that faith is more reliable than a coin toss?
Well, it's hard for me to demonstrate it to you.
No,
if
sir,
you're
that's
not the one that
that's not the
has
way.
the faith.
No, sir, that's not the way reason works. There's not something that's true for you or something hard to demonstrate to you. Can you demonstrate that faith is more reliable than a coin toss? Because everybody who's tried, including the Templeton Foundation, keeps demonstrating that faith is no more reliable than a coin toss.
An ally has been slain.
Well, again, you're comparing a coin toss with like a whole religion.
No, sir,
And
I'm
you
not.
can't-
I'm talking about methodologies and suggesting that something.
Right.
You're suggesting that something is reliable, and I'm saying that I have no demonstration that it is any more reliable than a coin toss. Can you demonstrate that?
Again, it's hard for me to demonstrate
Then
something
you
that
shouldn't have called.
given to you by experience. Given to you, but I'm saying you're excluding the possibility.
I'm not
of
excluding the
seeking
possibility.
experience.
I'm asking for evidence for a proposition. That is not excluding a possibility. I'm asking you for evidence, and you are not giving it.
An enemy has been
Zachary, can I ask you a
The
question?
next man does not-
If they're, let's say they're, Zachary, let's say we've got two sets of parents, and they're each set has a child who's dying of childhood leukemia, and both sets of parents have faith that if they pray to God to cure their child of leukemia, that child will recover. And one child gets better, and one child does not get better. Okay? Were the parents whose child died, but who had faith that their child would get better,
Your turret has been destroyed.
was their faith justified?
I'm sorry. Can you restate the question?
So you got two sets of parents. One set of each set of parents has a child dying of leukemia. Both sets of parents pray to God to heal their child of leukemia. One child recovers, one child does not. Both sets of parents have faith that by praying to God wholeheartedly, that their child will recover. One child recovers, one child does not. Does the parents of the child who did not recover, was their faith justified?
Well, you're talking about faith through prayer. I'm talking about faith as a means to truth. I don't see how this is relevant.
Can you demonstrate faith as a means to truth is more reliable than a coin toss? If you say not to me, I'm
How do
handing
you want me to? How do you want me to demonstrate it?
I'm asking you if you can. What an absolutely telling question. I'm asking you if you can demonstrate it, and you're asking me how to do it.
I'm claiming that it's a personal quest of truth through faith, not something that, oh, here's you some faith, here's you some faith. Like, I can't give faith to you.
I didn't ask you to give me faith. I asked you to demonstrate the reliability of the method that you're using. If I hold up a ruler and say I measured this and it's 3 inches, and you say, how do you know that that's 3 inches? I can show you the ruler, and I can show you that it works on everything else. I can show that it at least is consistent. And if you say, hey, your ruler's wrong, that was printed incorrectly, here's the actual standard, and now we know that this is actually 4 inches. Cool, we've corrected something. This is the methodology by which we go about determining whether or not something is true. Can you demonstrate that faith is a reliable pathway to truth?
For me to demonstrate that, I have to demonstrate that the belief gained through faith leads to the actual truth. So if are you asking me, is the faith in God reliable in determining the truth that God exists?
Anything.
Zachary, you believe it. Explain why.
I could have faith that leaping from this high part or this high cliff to the next one would save me. I don't know it. And through jumping, through having the faith, I might actually make it. And so therefore I discover the truth through faith. That's a different context.
No. You discovered the truth by actual investigation. Faith convinced you
You
that
can actually investigate God through faith.
You didn't know that it
You
was
can
true.
investigate God through
You
faith.
didn't know that it was true until you put it to the test. It wasn't faith that led you to the truth. It is
Why
coincidence.
would I doubt if I have
It is
faith?
coincidence that
It died. It died.
your faith was coincidentally connected to the truth.
Can you say the same for Christianity, that faith is coincidentally to discovering the truth of God?
And I say the same for
How do
Christianity.
you know that?
I'm talking about an epistemological methodology and whether or not that leads you to the truth. The discovery of the truth in your example was actually jumping from one thing to the other, not faith. It was putting it to the test. That is how we get to the truth, not faith.
I'm saying there are some truth claims in this world that you could not attain to if you did not have faith.
Like what?
Like what?
Well, for example, jumping from one cliff to the next cliff, because I didn't have faith that I could make it, and I wouldn't jump.
You don't have to have any faith that you can make it. You just have to be willing to do it to find out. I don't know, for example, I genuinely don't know if I went out and stood at the back porch, how far I could jump from a standing jump. I genuinely don't know. But I don't need faith that I'm going to make it 4 feet. If I'm going to make it, I put it to the test by actually doing the jump. And the truth is determined by the data, not by what my internal faith led me to. Maybe I can jump 4 feet. Maybe I can't jump 4 feet. The only way that we know what...
I have faith you can jump more than 4 feet.
I don't. The only way we could know what the truth is for me to actually do it, not the faith. Faith doesn't lead us to truth. It's not a methodology. It's the excuse people give when they don't have a good reason. And somebody asks, why do you believe something? And you have good reasons, you give the good reasons. You don't ever say, I have faith.
Yeah, Zachary, and what other avenue of life do you say in what other avenues of life do you say, I believe this based on faith? I'm gonna buy this car. I think it's a good choice. I just have it on faith. No, you have it because you've done your research, you took a look at the car, you took it for a test drive, you took someone with more knowledge about cars and they did it under the hood examination of it. You don't do it based on faith, right?
Well, I wouldn't say any belief is totally formed on having 100% evidence. There's like a mixture of trust in your ability to actually perceive the evidence. You have to believe that, the world operates by logical way.
Yeah. So the thing is.
So you're saying that you know everything that you believe.
No, I'm not saying that at all.
As a fact.
No, because you're no longer talking about the same thing. None of us are claiming absolute certainty. As a matter of fact, I don't think you can be absolute about anything. But the things that I believe are not based only on faith, because faith is not a reliable pathway to the truth. My beliefs are based on evidence.
But see, by relying, what type of evidence? You're excluding faith as a means for discovering evidence.
No,
within
sir.
the Christian framework.
No, sir. No, sir. I did not exclude it. It excluded itself by demonstrating never demonstrating that it has that it is in any way a reliable method of truth. It excluded itself in the same way that the coin toss excluded itself. It is not a
path. A lack of evidence to make a claim that faith can never be valid.
That is.
You haven't experienced it to be valid. You say it isn't valid.
No, sir. No, sir. I wish you would fucking listen. Can faith, as I said 20 minutes ago, faith, if you take something on faith, you might be right and you might not be right. But whether or not you're right, the justified belief that you are right is based on the evidence and not based on faith. Because faith has no mechanism to tell you whether or not you're right.
I still think by
still with us?
Yeah.
To say that, do you think it's possible that you might obey however the Bible commands you to do in order to seek faith? Like, do you not see that as a possible means to truth?
Why would I? No, sir. That has nothing. That's separate from faith. So you could come up with something and say, hey, if you try to live your life by what the Bible says, if you live a biblical life, this will lead you to truth. That's separate from faith. Faith is believing something that is something is true without good evidence for it. But why would I want to live a biblical life at all? I don't feel like I should be enslaving the people around me and beating them until they're nearly dead. I don't believe that women are inferior to men. I don't believe in taking over entire nations from other people. I don't believe in keeping the young virgin girls for myself. I don't believe the Bible advocates for morals in a large sense at all. So if I can look at the book and see that it is not a good guide for life, and my position is based on evidence, then when somebody comes along and tells me that it is, and theirs is based on faith, I know that they don't understand the nature of evidence and what should be required before something's believed.
But do you not recognize the possibility that your assessment of that evidence is flawed?
Yes,
because if
I
Christianity is true,
that. I have never suggested that I'm perfect, but do you think slavery is okay?
I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with slavery.
Okay, goodbye.
I think mistreatment of slaves is different from slavery.
Okay, so first of all, I would disagree with both of them. All right. Let me correct that. Intrinsically wrong. We'll set that aside because that one I may not agree with. The Bible allows you to own slaves.
Sure.
The Bible allows you to beat slaves.
Is that in the New Testament?
No, Exodus 21 and Leviticus 25 and Deuteronomy. But the Bible allows you to beat slaves. Hang on, Zachary. When I said the Bible allows you to beat slaves, why did you ask if it was in the New Testament?
Because I know in the New Testament it says to treat your slaves with respect. I mean, because although you are a master, you have your own master in heaven, which is God.
No, the New Testament
you would treat your slaves.
The New Testament tells slaves to obey their masters, even the cruel ones. But it doesn't matter whether something's in the New Testament or Old Testament. The Old Testament, you can beat your slaves as long as they don't die within a couple of days. Was that it?
Depends on.
Depends on what?
What?
Depends on what?
I suppose it depends on how the slave is acting. I'm not totally sure
Oh,
what the
go
rules
fuck
are
yourself.
for that.
Go fuck yourself completely.
Yeah.
You think it's okay to own people's
kind of
property?
rude.
I know. Oh, it's kind of rude. What's more rude than you here dehumanizing people, suggesting that it's okay to own them as property and that you can beat them if they misbehave? What's more rude than that, you shithead?
Do you want to be a slave, Zachary?
Yeah. Well,
is that totally cool?
you willing to be our slave under the rules of Exodus 21 that your God put down? You want to be our slave?
Well, according to the Bible, slaves, the more they are obedient, the more they are blessed. From a Christian worldview, being a slave, doesn't really mean anything because the pleasures, the pains of this life are meaningless compared to what happens in the afterlife.
Aha! I am sorry that you have sacrificed both your intellect, your any hope of a sound epistemology, and your sense of value as a human being on the altar of a repugnant, immoral book, such that you can sacrifice such that you can sacrifice the entirety of the only life you know you're going to get, as if it was just a place to wipe your feet before the real life begins. The rest of us are going to focus on this life because it's the only one we know we're going to get, and we're going to do what we can to encourage people to treat them well, treat each other well, to not have slaves, to not have women as second-tier citizens, because I don't give a fuck what happens in another life. I care about what happens in this life. And if you don't care what happens in this life, why did you call?
If I don't care what happens in this life, why did I call?
Correct.
Well, I think my
Did you just
call
biden your
doesn't really-
time to get to the afterlife?
Yeah, why are you still here?
What? Why am I still here?
Yeah, did you brush your teeth today? Why'd you bother? It's quarantine. It's all that stuff. But, why do you bother doing anything if this life doesn't mean anything?
Are you racist? Do you hate people of other races that aren't yours?
I don't hate people of other races.
How do you feel about the people of the nations around you?
People of the nations around me?
Yeah.
Yeah, do you think it's fine to take them as slaves?
That's a pretty broad. It's a pretty broad question. I mean, they have their own cultures. What I
Is there-
think of slaves.
Is there anything wrong? Is there anything wrong with being racist? I mean, after all, this life doesn't matter, right? So there's nothing wrong with being racist. There's nothing wrong with killing people, right?
Well, that could affect your soul, and it would therefore affect you in the afterlife. Doing certain things.
But hang on, Zachary.
Sorry,
If I killed a bunch of people, and hated a bunch of people for their race, and I raped a bunch of people, can't God forgive me for all that?
Well, God could forgive you, but that's relying on the possibility that you would actually, become a Christian afterwards, which is pretty risky in my opinion.
So you think that God can just forgive me for raping and killing and enslaving and being a racist, and that this somehow makes up for it?
If you repent and change your lifestyle and you're renewed, because Christ did pay for all sins, yes.
Okay.
No one's perfect.
How did he pay for all the sins? I'm always wondering this one. How does that work?
Yeah, because like if Johnny punches
I
me
might
in
not
the-
be able to.
if Johnny punches me in the nose and you tell me that you're sorry, that doesn't do anything to fix my nose. And if he steals $100 out of my wallet, and you just tell me that you forgave him, it doesn't. I'm still out $100. So how does God fix stuff?
Yeah, how does that work? Break it down for us, please.
Okay, well, he hung up. So,
Well,
it's frustrating to me to watch the people who genuinely don't care about this life when they really, really do. They tell you, oh, this life is like dirty rags. Yes, I'm familiar with that verse, and I think it's polluting minds, because I don't think this life is like dirty rags. I think this life is both wonderful and terrible. I think it is filled with good things and bad things, but it's the only life that I know I'm going to get. And if you tell me, you might as well come to me and say, hey, you know what? If you just jump off this cliff, or actually, let me push you off this cliff right now, because then you're not committing suicide. Which, by the way, the Bible isn't against. That's they invented the anti-suicide thing at some point. But then you speed yourself on to the afterlife. It's like we talked about with Andrea Yates drowning her little kids. If you loved your kids and wanted to make sure they were going to spend eternity in heaven, that's the best thing you could possibly do. And yet we look at that, even Christians, even the guy who just hung up on us, and they would all look at Andrea Yates as if she was a monster, because she was.
Hey everybody, today we're debating SJ.
I'm just gonna have to do a new stream, I guess.
1 in 10.
It's going really bad. I have no idea why it's giving me the business. Yeah,
Jeez.
it's not. I don't know if it's working.
And are you trying to
think it's
stream from
working.
OBS?
Yeah. Yep.
Oh, all right. And so you've got your YouTube stream address from your Go Live dashboard and the stream key.
Yeah, and it's just. I think we're live.
Oh,
we are
all right.
live. It's working.
Okay.
I have to post the link.
Okay, no problem. So
Cool.
we'll give Tim a second to do that.
Well, yeah. Say what you want to say about whatever while I.
Well, I was going to go into an anti-Semitic screed, but I want to make sure you hear all of it. So I'm just gonna wait a second. Now, okay, so we're going to be having a conversation with Tim Pool. Tim Pool is known to some people in my audience and not known to some people in my audience.
So yeah, final call for today. Thank you so much for calling in, Bear in California. Before we actually get to you, I just wanted to point out there was somebody else in chat who is just desperate to show how they would love to call in, but the line is busy. Jay Empty is saying the line is busy. Can anybody else? It closed? Aw. Well, in that case, you should call again on another day, Jay Empathy, and prove that the conversation will go your way and we will cowardly hang up on you, which is what your claim was. So, but you know,
you
that's
can't leave me on a. You're leaving me on a tease
people who
like
are legends
that.
in their own mind. But anyway, it's fine because we've got a genuine theist on the line who wants to explain something to us about how people are using the Bible wrong. So welcome, Bear in California. Thanks so much for waiting.
Greetings, everyone, and thank you for having me. Yeah, the first thing I'd like to say is I understand all atheists because of the way this book is being illustrated. This is not a Christian book, and I didn't prove that many of times. This is not a Christian book, and we can go into that later. I didn't pull out that spiritual one creator God that they're talking about. That's nowhere in that Bible, and I can prove that at any day, any time. Only with the Bible. I do not go outside the Bible. Evolution, I can prove that inside the Genesis. But the topic that I called in for, because I was listening about the guys is out there, you know, some use profanity, but they're voicing their religion in a very, very vulgar way. And in my community, we have the Hebrew Israelites where they're on the corner, white man, devil, and, you know, doing all these vulgar things, and they're actually hurting our community more than they're doing good. So this is on a one note. No matter what religion you are, this is something that has to be done. So it's either if we can do it legally, they try to say that church and you know, government don't mix, so they have the freedom of speech. But when you use their own Bible against them, they cannot say nothing. And I have a Bible verse that proves that said that they're not supposed to be on the street corners at all.
Okay, I'm confused. Bear, pause. Bear, pause. I'm confused about a lot of stuff. So maybe we're talking about different Bibles, but when you say the Bible isn't a Christian book, when the Christian Bible is the foundation of Christianity, I think there's a little bit of hang on. I think there's a little bit of language confusion there that could be clarified. But when you talk about how you can use the Bible to prove evolution, no, you can't. You can't use the Bible to prove anything other than here's what it says in the Bible. And then when you say that they want separation of church and state so they have free speech, that's not what free speech is. So there's a number of things that you said that I'm just confused about. And so can we pick one and have you clarify it? Like, how is the Bible not a Christian book if the Christian Bible is the hang on, let me finish the question. Yeah. What do you mean when you say that the Bible, the Christian Bible, that is the foundation of Christianity, isn't a Christian book? Well, what do you mean by that?
You saying Christian Bible? That number one, everyone that's knowing that Bible, knowing that Paul went to Damascus to prosecute and kill Christians. This was before Christ's death, when he was killing Christians. They went to Antioch. That's when they was called Christians. So that means that Christianity was already formed. Listen to what I'm saying. Listen to what I'm saying.
No, Bear, stop. If I'm trying to interrupt you to get clarification. Yes, you are done. You are done. Okay? The book, when I say it's the Christian Bible, what I mean is this is the Bible with the text in it that serves as the foundation that teaches Christianity. The New Testament in particular, the Old Testament being a Jewish Bible, the New Testament being the writings of Paul and others. I'm aware that Paul had a Damascus Road experience and went from going to kill Christians to becoming one. I'm aware that Christianity existed prior to the writing. That is a necessary fact. You cannot have the writing before there's the belief. The writing is an expression of the belief. I'm asking you, how can you say that this book, which is the expression of Christian beliefs and the foundation of Christian doctrine spreading, isn't Christian? What do you mean by that?
Okay. Number one, just because they took some information and called it theirs, that doesn't mean it's theirs. Number one. Number two,
this isn't about whose it is.
Listen.
I'm going to hang up on you in a minute.
Well, then hang the fuck up then. I don't care. I'm trying to get some solutions out here. We have a point.
You're not getting solutions. I'm asking you to explain what you mean, and instead you keep just denying things.
I'm trying to explain to you.
Would you listen? If you would fucking listen to me, if you would listen to me, we could get clarification. All right. Your ass is now muted. Please stop talking and listen, because I'm genuinely trying to understand this. Here's a book. I've got 15 copies of it next to me. This book, part of it is the writings of Christians, people who believed that Jesus was the Christ, people who believed this particular doctrine or a collection of doctrines. This is the book that is a collection of those writings. How does it possibly make sense to say that this is not a Christian book when it is the premier foundational Christian book? That's all I'm asking, because I'm not saying you're wrong, so please stop being defensive. I'm asking you to explain what you mean when you say it's not a Christian book, because you could mean you have secret knowledge of a different Christianity and that the Bible is a perversion of it. Or you could mean that there are other doctrines that are missing. You could mean that there's another version of Christianity that isn't tied to the Bible. I'm trying to understand what your point is, and you just keep going off on tangents. So when you say this book that is undeniably, indisputably, the cornerstone of Christianity isn't a Christian book, all I want to know is, what do you mean by that?
Okay. Then if you listen real closely, I'm telling you, and it's self-explanatory. If Christianity was developed, they had their own rituals, they had their own foundation way before these documents in this book was written. And those documents is different from the Bible. So evidently somebody hijacked something and they calling it their own, but it's not theirs. When Paul went to Damascus, when Paul went to Antioch, they was called Christians. You don't see nowhere where Paul called himself a Christian. Nowhere.
This is so irrelevant. This is such a confused understanding of what's going on. It's completely irrelevant.
Okay. But what are these? Basically, the only reason why I got you on here is to talk about how to get these people off these corners. They're radical things that they're
who
doing.
off
That's
of
really
what?
the basis of the
Okay, now you're muted again. Who is on a corner, and who is it that you want to get off of the corner? Briefly, who do you want to get off the corner? Why do you want to get them off the corner? And what is your plan? That's it. Boom, boom, boom.
Hey, you got too much control. Fuck you and your show. Let's debate anything that you want to talk about. We can go on a whole different show. Because you keep muting me, and you don't have an understanding. You ain't trying to see. I'm trying to tell y'all.
Bear, get your own fucking show if you want to control a conversation.
I just gave you an opportunity to speak to thousands of people and tell them who you want off the street corner, why, and what your plan is. And instead of taking that opportunity, you hung up. Fuck you and your show, says Bear. I'm sorry that you have bought into some weird, very esoteric nonsense about Christianity. But when you say something like the Bible isn't a Christian book, you are on the bizarre end of things, and you have to expect that people are going to ask you to actually justify that. Not that you're wrong. At no point was I saying this is not true. But when you say these Christians had their beliefs before the Bible, correct. They did. And it was spread by word of mouth. This is what the apostles were doing. No, they had their own documents and they had their own rituals. Yes, they did. And the Bible is the codification of that. The books that made it into the Bible, of all the potential books that were out there, were the ones that were selected by this group. They don't get to claim it's theirs or call it theirs. They're not. This isn't a matter of ownership. They're saying, here is the authorized groups. Now, if you want to point to other documents, cool. If you want to point to other stories, cool.
That was my issue. It was like, in virtue of what? I mean, if a Christian could just cite, like, P52, for example, right? It's like the earliest scrap of the manuscript. But I'm not sure how, when you say there's other documents, what are you going to offer up that to the scholars that are going to cite like P52 or anything like that, and then ignore like oral traditions, things like that, where you end up getting the actual the Bible itself. There's a very strange line of reasoning there.
I tell you what, while we're wrapping things up here, if you guys want to get together and push us towards 666 likes to freak out folks like Bear and other people, you should be doing that right now, because there's well over 1,000 of you still here. it's strange to me that people are given the opportunity to express something, and all we're doing is, I want it to be clear. I don't want the audience to sit here confused. And if, no offense to Bear, but if what you're saying sounds like what you would hear someone with a sandwich board on a street corner who's off of their medication saying, preaching about the end times or the secret knowledge of this religion or anything else, what he said literally at one point, if you go back and listen, was that there are Hebrew Israelites on the corner. Now, the caller called before to say, hey, am I anti-Semitic? And I'm like, no, not unless you're hating on Jews. But if you're saying there are Hebrew Israelites on the corner, okay, I want to know who these people are. I want to know why you want them off the corner, and how you're going to use a Bible to do it, and which Bible. It's not a Christian Bible, and it's a Bible you can prove evolution with. Bear was all over the place, and I know he doesn't get it. Most people haven't put the time in it to think about, hey, how can I defend what I believe, or what it is, my beliefs, or what it is that I'm saying. But we're not the enemy here. J. Mike and I we didn't get up this morning and say, man, I can't wait to do this show where every time somebody tries to say what they believe in God, we can just hang up on them. That is not what either of us have ever wanted to do. And yes, there's a delay, and yes, it's problematic, and we're making improvements on it. But most of the rest of the calls, we managed to work our way around it. But if you're going to call in and say, oh, there's some special version of Christianity, cool. I'm not interested in conspiracy theories, and I really don't care, I guess, who Bear wants to get off of the street corner. I thought I did, because I was really looking forward to hearing why we should do that.
How are you doing today?
Scared.
Okay,
I'll make this easier. Jamie's far less scary than I am.
So and he said I get to talk more.
I'll let him talk. You don't have anything to be scared of.
Yeah, I'm nice.
Well, I listened to that last call, and I feel like I'll be honest. A friend of mine dared me to call y'all. She said y'all were real nice. My question, I guess, was just, I don't understand how anyone could be an atheist. I mean, I live my life, I try to live my life, to serve God and to be a good person. And when she said, oh, I talked to these atheists, I said, ow. I don't know. So I don't know what.
Have you called the show before? Maybe?
Pardon me?
Have you called the show before?
No,
Okay.
I hadn't heard of y'all.
Oh, okay. You sound a little bit familiar. Okay, so you say that you don't understand how anyone can be an atheist. To be clear... Oh, sorry?
Go ahead.
Well, no, to be clear, when I say I am an atheist, for example, I mean there's a bunch of people saying this God exists, that God exists, Yahweh, Jehovah, Allah, Vishnu, and I say I don't see it. Is that what you're saying, or are you saying people that run around and set cars on fire and attack churches? Because I've heard that as well.
Is that what you do?
No. I just wanted to clarify, because that one of those two things is a lot more unbelievable and outrageous.
But what do you mean by
atheist? Yeah.
Someone who doesn't believe in God.
Okay. So are you wondering, like, I was a believer before, are you wondering how I got to where I am, or would that be a helpful thing for me to tell you about?
Yeah,
maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. So for most of my life, I believed that a God exists, that it was the God of the Bible, vaguely. I was baptized and raised as an Episcopalian.
You
I mean...
The high church.
Yeah. Are you what denomination are you?
Well, I heard Matt say Southern Baptist, but I'm Independent Baptist.
Oh, you heathen. No, I'm just kidding. I actually, and I'm going to let Jamie go, but I actually would occasionally go to Pentecostal churches because they had better concerts. You know, like you could go see Carmen and Petra and stuff like that.
You heathen.
But I was also, I wasn't just Southern Baptist. I was primarily Southern Baptist, but we went to other churches on occasion as well. But, yeah.
Well, yeah, you go to the gospel churches for the best music.
Yeah. Well, sorry, I brought it up because there's a whole series of jokes like, oh, you know, if you're a Baptist, but on the weekends you can be a Methodist because you want to have a drink. But if you really want to get wild, then, you know, for a weekend you're an Episcopalian because then you can dance and have a drink and, like, you know, whatever. But no, so I was baptized and raised as an Episcopalian, right? So we would always go Easter and Christmas, but oftentimes we'd go as well. In between, you know, just regular Sundays. And, for, you know, recently I've had to look back and be like, how religious was I when I was, you know, religious? Like, how devout was I? Because it seems weird for me now to get into that mindset. And I found a whole series of prayers that I'd written down. And actually, after I went to Catholic high school, I started collecting rosaries because that kind of thing seemed really cool to me. So I believed devoutly, I prayed, etc. And then after a while, I bumped into some ideas and some questions. Okay, well, what is a reliable way of determining what's true, right? If someone stole the cookie from the cookie jar, how do you actually figure out who it is so that all the kids in the class will stop singing that annoying repetitive song, right? You investigate and you figure out if they've got chocolate on their hands, right? But what I found was the only time when I said, oh, okay, how do I figure out what's true? I kneel, I pray, and I think about what's going on in my head. The only time I used that method to figure out what's true was on questions of God. And that was the only method I could use. And then I thought about, okay, well, we have cars and machines, and we have, you know, amazingly, you know, fantastic planes and computers. How did we determine how, you know, electricity works, how we can design a plane that weighs, I don't know how unbelievably heavy planes are, it's like several tons, that flies through the air and carries people with it. How did we figure that out? And I realized, like, okay, well, we studied things that we could observe, and we tested them, and we improved it, and we tested them, and we improved it, and we tested them, and we improved it, right? 100 years ago, if you went into a university and you went into the science department, or you went into even mathematics, or, well, literature, you'd have an extra 100 years of literature now, right? You could go back and be like, hey, guys, here's this information from 100 years ago. It's all updated. It's all new. If you took information from a theology department today and you went back 100 years, you would have nothing new to tell them. Which kind of tells me about whether or not the methods being used to figure this out have evolved or developed or found anything new. And given that they contradict each other, it sort of didn't lend any credibility to, well, okay, how did you come to this conclusion that there is a God, right? Like, particularly in mathematics, they can say, oh, here's why 2 + 2 = 4. Here's a giant logical proof for why 1 + 1 = 2, and it's a huge breakthrough. Oh, how do you know that this is what makes, what is it, baking soda and vinegar expand? You can test it, you can figure it out, you can look at things on a microscopic level. Nothing like that exists for God. And humans all over the world come to very, very, very different conclusions about God. Oftentimes, 2 people that go to the same church. People all over the world, oftentimes 2 people that go to the same church or live in the same house, come to very, very different conclusions about who to vote for, what their favorite movie is, what's fashionable, what's not, what the best food is. So if I'm looking at the way that people determine whether or not a God exists, it looks a lot like people trying to figure out what they like. And I know I've gone a little bit off the rails here and talked for a long period of time. But
for me, it's just, I'm much like Jamie, I'm not convinced. I am, in fact, convinced that some of them are wrong, and hopefully demonstrably so, but I realize there's countless claims about different gods. They can't all be correct, but they could all be wrong. I'm not assuming that all of them are wrong, but of the many, how do I go about figuring out which, if any of these, are correct or even likely to be correct? And not to be glib, but I can probably, not off the top of my head, but I could probably come up with a list of 1,000 gods you don't believe in. And you know, the old joke is that atheists just go one God further. But the other aspect of this is that Jews think that Christians are wrong. Christians think that Muslims are wrong. Muslims think that Hindus are wrong. You know, we are agreeing with all of them, and we are baffled that any one person could reasonably justify saying, nope, this is the right one. And the old joke, which has nothing to do with this, is that Jews don't recognize Jesus, Protestants don't recognize the Pope, and Baptists don't recognize each other in the liquor store.
Well, I mean, I know that, and I'm trying to follow y'all.
Sorry,
I
did a lot of
know
talking.
that my God is real. My grandson, when he was 2, he had a tumor on his pituitary gland. And
I'm sorry
they
to hear
didn't
that.
want to treat it. They did the MRA. MRI.
Yeah, MRI. Yeah.
Sorry. Not
No,
the
you're
MRI.
fine. You're fine.
And they did another one 6 months later. It was the same size, and they did another one 6 months after that, and it had shrunk. And they didn't. They literally did not do any treatment. And I don't know how that's possible without God. We were all praying for him and hoping he would be well, and he's doing real well now. And it the last time they did the MRI, it had disappeared. I mean, I've seen miracles in my own life that, how else could that be?
So, well.
Are you going to, which
one of the
path
things
do you
is,
take?
there are parts of the story that I have difficulty believing, that they're repeatedly doing MRIs and there's no treatment. But that may be the case. But we know that cancer goes into remission.
No, he was too young. They didn't want
It's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. I'm not saying you're lying. I'm saying that I'm getting the second hand, so I'm trying to explain. We know that cancer goes into remission. We know that tumors shrink. You started by saying you know your God is real, and then you went to the story about your 2-year-old was a grandson, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then what you said about that is, I don't know how that could happen without God. That is a claim that is not, I know God did this. It's, I can't come up with any other explanation other than God. And yet there's no demonstration that there is a God, could be a God, or that a God could do this. There's a logical fallacy involved in your reasoning that is, I can't think of any other explanation, so I'm going to go with this one. And even if you could do that to say, you know, hey, my dog came in wet. I don't know how that could happen unless it was raining. Granted, I know that we know that your neighbor could have turned a hose on it or whatever else, or could have gone swimming. But to say that I don't know how that could happen if it's not raining is not in any way confirmation that it's raining. It's a mistake in reasoning. And so people can forever talk about the anecdotes of somebody had this illness, we prayed and it got better. The problem is, how do you demonstrate that the prayer had anything to do with it, or that there was a God who answered that prayer specifically? Because we've tested intercessory prayer, and it works at the rate of chance, or worse. When people actually know they're being prayed for, it works less.
Performance anxiety.
So these personal anecdotes of, hey, I saw this and I don't have an explanation for it, awesome. Then the correct answer is you don't have an explanation for it. But you're trying to simultaneously say, I don't have an explanation, therefore it must be God. And that's how we got to every time somebody has offered God as an explanation, and we've gone on to find the actual explanation, the answer was never God. Not once.
I don't know what you mean by intercessory prayer.
Me praying for Matt, like praying for another person, praying that God intercede on their behalf. So just to clarify.
So you don't think that works?
We know it doesn't work. It's been tested.
Yeah. When we've examined, we've found indicates that it does not change what happens in the world.
It doesn't matter who's praying, what God they're praying to. You could flip a coin, and it would be heads or tails, just as good an indicator as to whether or not you're going to see any improvement that somebody's prayed over.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just don't. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't.
I understand that.
You know,
So, I mean, Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No. You were in the middle of a.
I mean, you know, I've lost a lot of people in my life, and God has told me I'm going to meet them someday again. And my grandson Andrew is healthy today, and
So how does...
I don't know how you can say that wasn't God.
Well, we're not saying it wasn't God. We're saying there's no reason to think it was God. That's different. But how does God tell you that you're going to meet these people again?
I don't know. One can read the future I don't know.
Yeah, this is one of the things about the language when we start talking about God, and this is not a problem with you, Amanda, and I can appreciate, having at least somewhat been there, the idea that you've been convinced most of your life that someday you're going to go to heaven and you're going to be reunited with all your loved ones and everything's going to be wonderful, and the very idea that this might not be true is not just potentially terrifying, it can be almost traumatizing. And I think this is one of the disservices. Yeah, and oh gosh, I'm no good when people cry. I think this is one of the disservices.
No, I didn't. I was just thinking about my sister. I lost my sister when I was 13, and that I'd see her again, and I always believed I would.
This is one of the things where I think religions have done a disservice to all of us, because death is a natural part of life, and what religions have done, it's awful. And what religions have done is put death in a context that eases people's frustration, anxiety, mourning, by propping up a story, oh, I'll get to meet them again. Now, even if that were true, which we not only don't have good reason to think is true, there's good reason to think that there's no such thing as a soul or anything that, of me that could exist anywhere else. But if instead we told people that we have no good reason to think that there's an afterlife, that gets people to focus on treating people right in this life and making the most of it and valuing it, so that when death comes, apart from, instances where it's just a surprise shock, I can't imagine a parent losing a child, but it helps us to deal with it better. And if it turns out then that there's an afterlife anyway,
bonus.
Okay, it's a bonus, but at least not depending on the afterlife encourages us to do better in our interactions in the one and only life that we know we get.
I'm sorry, what did you mean that I didn't treat her right?
He wasn't. No, not you specifically. He's not saying that you didn't treat your sister right.
Yeah.
He's saying that in general, if you tell people this life that you have, where you're bumping into other people on the street, that's the only life that you're gonna have. That's the only life that they're gonna have, and you bump into them, and a person just cut. Not you. Sorry. If Steve bumps into Bob and Steve cusses out Bob and they go their separate ways, and Steve goes, I really shouldn't have done that. Well, when I see him in heaven, then I'll make it right.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about you. There are people who whose one of their concerns about this is, I didn't get to say goodbye. I didn't tell them I love them enough. It's not about mistreating. Oh, well, I'll get to make up for that later. If you don't think you get to make up for it later, you tell people you love them more. You show that you appreciate them more. You exercise a bit more patience, or at least you can. Not everybody's going to.
Yeah, a person, not you specifically.
When after I was 13 when she died, so that was really hard. And I talked to a friend of mine was Catholic, and I went to church with her one time, and I told the Catholic priest, because I was real sad, and I told him about what happened, and my sister committed suicide. So, and he told me she was in hell. Or no, he didn't say it that way. He said that.
He said something to those effects, which is another example of how religion
she couldn't be in paradise or whatever.
So that explains why you're not Catholic.
And I yelled at her the last time I saw her.
Yeah.
But
this is the thing, and it actually gets worse than this. It's not just about propping up what is almost certainly false hope. It fundamentally changes the way we interact with people. And yet, here's the thing. There are countless different views about an afterlife. If the Catholics are right, maybe you don't meet up. Oh, and by the way, if the Catholics are right and you're not a Catholic, you're not going to meet up with anybody anyway.
Yeah.
And so
we can hang out.
I hear I hear from atheists who've been longtime atheists, and yet they're still concerned about fears of a hell, the hell they were indoctrinated into. And the answer that I tend to give is, how much time do you spend worrying about the hells of other religions that you weren't brought up believing in? My thing is, as an atheist, I don't have any reason to think that anything about me will survive my death. I don't think there's a soul. I don't think there's an afterlife. And I could spend my entire life sad and miserable and depressed about the fact that I'm not going to get to go be with Jesus or whoever or meet my loved ones again. And all that would do is make my life worse. If in fact this is the only life that I get, which is what the evidence points to so far, then it's in my best interest to not dwell on the way things aren't, but to focus on, as best I can, the way things are. And this is why the kind of ancient notions of some religions, I think, are poisoning our interpersonal relationships, to the point where if you don't believe what I believe, and let me take that out of you and me, there are parents who disown their children if they identify that they're an atheist. We have to find new homes for them. I don't care if my
never do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. And good for you. If my child turned out to be a serial killer, I would say all day long that they were absolutely horrible, that they'd done horrible things and were in fact terrible people, and yet I would still love my kid. And yet, merely for disagreements about not just whether or not there is a God, but which God's the right God, which afterlife's the right life. Should men be able to have sex with each other? Should women be able to have sex with each other? Which is less objectionable generally, which I find kind of hypocritical. But all of these things that drive us apart tend to come from religious ideas that nobody can prove. Oh, well, it's just opinion, dude. Yes, but you're legislating your opinion and you're treating other people based on that opinion. Doesn't that matter? What people believe matters. And I think religions not only can't demonstrate that they're true, but I think that they've done a great deal of harm and are continuing to do so. But
does that make any sense?
Well, yeah. So I think y'all were real nice. I mean, but here, I mean, bottom line, if I believed I would never see my sister and my brother again, I don't think I could bear it. And
that's my objection to religion.
Y'all are talking logic. Y'all are talking logic, and
I think also we're talking humanism, because this is my objection to religion. If in fact you had grown up with the understanding that death was almost certainly the end, you would have the tools to bear it. But because religions have convinced you that this is the case, they haven't equipped you with the tools to mourn properly, to take stock of life, because I've lost people that I love, and I can continue my life. And I'm going to be sad. I'm going to miss them. I'm going to miss the interactions with them. But life is its own reward. And if I look at the time that I spend with them as the reward, then instead of focusing on some reward in an afterlife, then everything about my interactions are better.
I'm sorry, what kind of tools do you mean? I don't...
Well, oh, sorry, Amanda, finish your thought. I didn't mean to jump on...
I said, what kind of tools do you mean? I don't...
Yeah, I mean mental and emotional tools. So people deal with loss and grief in many different ways. There are some people who have a more practical view. Now, for example, when my grandfather died, I was pleased, not because I didn't like him, but because he had been in unbelievable suffering for a long time. And I was glad that I had shared...
You didn't believe he was with his king now.
No, I think he's dead, and I think that's what all the evidence
Okay.
points to.
Okay.
But his situation was so bad that death was preferable to continued suffering. And I still have all those years and all those stories to look back and remember on and be happy that I was able to share part of my life with him and not have all of that diminished by not having the idea that I was going to see him again. It's like if you were told from birth. I noted here that you specifically had some kind of response to why God reveals himself to some people and hides himself to others.
Yeah, my name's Tara. Basically, it's a little bit complicated, but it's related to the problem of evil. So I want to go into that a little bit. Basically, if we go back to the Garden of Eden, you had Satan had convinced Adam and Eve to eat from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil.
Well, and I will let you get through this, just for clarity. We have no reason to believe that happened, and Genesis doesn't say it was Satan, it says it was a serpent. It's only later revisions that apply that to Satan, but sure, we'll go with the mythology.
Okay. So basically, in Genesis 2:16 and 17, God said that the punishment from eating from the tree was basically death, and Satan said, you will certainly not die, for God knows that in the day that you eat from it, your eyes will be open and you will be like God, knowing good and bad. So basically, Satan there was accusing God of withholding something that was good from his creation.
Seems that the serpent was the one telling the truth there, don't you think? Because they didn't die that day.
Well, see, this is what I'm going to get into. Because the Bible admits that when Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and bad, that both of their eyes were opened.
Yeah, which affirmed what the serpent said.
Well, so this begs the question, does this imply that the tree had magical powers? And I would say no, the tree doesn't have magical powers. It was actually symbolic. When Adam and Eve decided to eat from the tree, they were essentially deciding for themselves.
So I could see the whole story as metaphorical or symbolic or whatever else. On the other hand, if you think this actually happened, then I don't know how you can write off a magical tree when you're talking about a serpent that spoke to Adam and Eve and told them what to do. I mean, where do you draw the line on? I mean, is the whole story just, did this not happen and it's just a metaphor for a fall from grace? Or
no,
so there were two people. Was there also a talking serpent?
There was a serpent that Satan was using to.
Well, it doesn't matter who was using it. There was a talking serpent, right? So we're already in the realm of magic. So why, if you're in the realm of magic, why do you get to say that it's unreasonable to say that the fruit was magical?
I'm not saying it's unreasonable to draw that conclusion. What I'm saying is, from my own personal opinion, that is symbolic.
Okay, so that's symbolic, but the people in the snake weren't symbolic.
Correct. And the reason why the name of the tree was symbolic, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, is, like I said, the tree symbolized Adam and Eve's decision to decide for their own what was good and evil, rather than relying on.
I've heard 100 different interpretations of this story, and Thomas Paine made a very good point in his Age of Reason that God would never use text to convey a message, and I think that this you're sort of playing into his argument that yeah, you can interpret this or interpret that or spin it this way and spin it that way and try to get to whatever conclusion you want to reach, but the story doesn't stand on its own very clearly because we're having to debate about interpretations.
Right, and
so it's a failure, right? Whoever wrote it failed at conveying the message they intended to fail because it's open to so much interpretation.
I'm not trying to prove that the story is true, and actually this plays a part into it too, is that it's not our job as Christians to prove things. We're here to plant seeds, and it's God's job to...
Actually, it's your job to give a reason for the faith that you have. So it is your job to prove things.
Right, exactly. So and the reason why God doesn't reveal himself to everybody actually has to do with the fact that this whole system the reason why we have all the evil now is because during that incident, essentially what Satan was doing was calling into question God's sovereignty, his justness, his right to rule. So
what's that have to do with whether or not? So God reveals himself to some people, right?
Right.
Are there some people that he doesn't reveal himself to?
Yes.
So why is God playing favorites? Does he not love everybody and want everybody to be justified in believing him?
He's not playing favorites.
Absolutely. No. If I have two kids and I want them to pay attention to me and listen to me and do what I say, and one of them I never, ever interact with, and the other one has actually met me, that's me playing favorites.
Yes, but the situation isn't the same.
Okay.
The reason is because in order to prove that Satan was wrong in what he was saying, basically Satan was calling into question whether or not God's way of rulership was correct. And this goes back to
I still don't see what that has to, okay, I still don't see what that has to do with why. Let's say I'm God, and Satan dares to call into question whether or not my way of ruling was correct. If I wanted to convince everybody that I existed and that I was real and that I was just, the best course of action would be for me to interact with all of them directly, because then they have firsthand experience.
Exactly.
So if I was a god and I chose to interact with some people and not interact with others, how could I ever condemn the people who I chose to not interact with?
God's not necessarily going to condemn everybody that he doesn't interact with. And the reason for this whole system right now isn't for God to prove that he's real, that he exists, that he has power, because if Satan had called into question God's power, his existence, that would have been easy to prove. That's not what Satan called into question. So the question that God has to answer is whether or not his rulership, his direction, is the right direction.
Yeah, in order to do that, first he'd have to demonstrate that he actually existed. But second of all, even if the God of the Bible were to come out and demonstrate to me right now that he was real, he'd still have a lot to answer for before I could ever respect him.
Right, and he's going to do that. The Bible says that there's going to be a 1,000-year reign of Christ.
The issue, though, is about whether or not belief is justified. And until he does that, belief isn't justified, and certainly reverence and respect and adherence isn't justified. So call me back after he does that.
Okay.
Because until then, I don't see how anybody could have good reason to believe.
The only people that really have good reason to believe are those to whom God reveals himself.
And how do they know that God's revealed himself? Because I was a fundamentalist Christian for more than 20 years, was studying to be a minister. If you'd have asked me at the time if I had experienced the Holy Spirit, I would have said yes. But I now understand that that wasn't the case.
Most people who are Christians who have faith, God hasn't revealed himself to them. God reveals himself to a very, very select group, even in biblical
times. So you're saying that most Christians believe for bad reasons?
Correct.
Okay. And how do you know that any Christians believe for good reasons?
I mean, I can't prove that to anyone.
How could anybody prove it?
I said, my purpose here isn't to prove that. My purpose is to explain, like I said, why God only reveals himself.
Well, it's the only point of disagreement. We both agree that people believe for bad reasons, but you're saying that there are some people who believe for good reasons, and I'm asking how you know that.
I know that because I believe that, God has touched my life. And I know that that isn't sufficient for you, but it's sufficient for me, and that's why I'm not here trying to prove anything to you.
Could you be wrong?
Yeah, I could be wrong.
Cool.
I don't think I'm wrong.
I know you don't think you're wrong. So the question then becomes, if there's something that I could be wrong about, but I'm convinced of it, I can usually give the reasons. Even if they're bad reasons, I can usually give the reasons for why I'm convinced. And if somebody were to look at those reasons and point out that they were fallacious, that they weren't sufficient, I would be able to accept that. And so when you tell me that you've got good reasons, all I was wondering was, what are the good reasons?
An ally has been slain.
I mean, it's a matter of things that have happened in my life. My life has been steered in a very specific direction.
How do you know that? I'll tell you, because I know plenty of people who think that their life has been steered. And not just by God, but by the fates or the stars or whatever else. And surely some of the people who you and I both would agree don't have good reasons also believe their life is being steered.
Because it has been consistent within my life that when I deviate from a certain path, I'm always brought back onto that path.
Well, that's been my experience as well. When I start to behave terribly to other people, my life tends to get worse. Does that mean there's a God steering me towards better behavior?
It's more than, people treating me bad. It's more like, I don't know how to describe it. I guess I can't really describe it.
Well, the question is, how do you know that it's God?
I have faith that it's God.
Okay. Couldn't you justify any position by saying I have faith?
Yeah, well...
Which doesn't that mean that faith is not a good reason for believing?
I don't think so. I think...
Really? So if I tell you that I believe that white people are superior to black people, and that's a position I take on faith, you're telling me that I might have a good reason?
No.
Okay, so faith is not necessarily a good reason.
Not necessarily. It can be a good reason.
How can it be a good reason if faith can be used to justify a good position, a correct position, and an incorrect position equally? How do you tell the difference? So let's say, for example, instead I said that I believe that white people are superior to black people because I rolled the dice and I rolled a 6. Would we agree that that's a bad and unreliable pathway to a true position?
Yeah.
Yeah. So faith is identical to that. You don't get to say that faith can be a good thing any more than you can say that rolling a 6 can be a good thing, a pathway to truth. You have to show that it's a reliable pathway to truth.
Well, faith is more than rolling the dice. Faith is also, when applied correctly, it's based on, your experiences in life. So
it's strange that you say applied correctly. I don't know how you would apply faith correctly. And from the Christian worldview, faith isn't even something you use. It's something that's given to you by God. It's not like it's a methodology.
And how does it change the reliability of faith?
There are people who are given faith by God, and then there are people who are convinced.
So why would God give a useless gift to people?
Because it serves his purpose. His purpose ultimately right now is to prove his point. His point being that his way of rulership is the correct way of rulership.
I don't see him attempting to prove any point. How do you know that God's trying to prove a point?
The way he's attempting to prove it is the only way to prove that God's way is the correct way is by comparing it to all other ways of rulership without God. So that's what this whole system is about.
That's ridiculous. I don't have to allow every sort of rulership to be able to know which one is better than others. We can say right off the bat, without ever performing the experiment, that any rulership that cuts off the head of anybody who is part of that system is demonstrably worse without ever actually having to do it. We can think about things and evaluate the consequences and extrapolate from knowns to unknowns. It's bizarre for you to claim that the all-knowing, all-powerful creator of everything has only one way of demonstrating that he's right, and that's to let everything fuck up everywhere around so that he can come out winning.
Well, you and I can justify that, and I can see where you're coming from with that, and I agree with that.
Yeah, why is your God stupider than I am?
That's not true.
It's not true.
That's not true. But
So he understands the basics of epistemology, and he understands what should be convincing, and he understands what's right or wrong, but he can't reveal himself and explain it to people in a way that would bring understanding to people. If I created a simulation game and my simulations don't understand me, am I not a miserable failure?
Actually, this begs one of the questions that Satan had raised, because when he accused God of withholding something from his creation, and he sort of did initially.
So Satan was telling the truth.
Humans are inferior to angels. Angels are inferior to Jesus. Jesus is inferior to God. Therefore, there is a hierarchy of creation, and in order to prove Satan wrong, one of the things that God is doing is Revelation reveals that there's going to be 144,000 that are picked from the earth.
Okay, now you're talking about something that isn't happening, that hasn't happened, that you have no evidence for. You're just plucking numbers out of a book. You can't know that that's happening if it hasn't happened, right? So this is just another exercise in you having confidence that this will happen.
Yeah.
Where do women and atheists fall on this pecking order?
What was that?
Where do women and atheists fall on this pecking order?
There have been people through history. Women. I don't see where you're.
Oh, well, just as soon as you establish a pecking order, you can put yourself above everybody else.
I mean, according to the Bible, men are superior to women.
Right. Do you buy that?
I interpret this passage a little differently than other people.
Well, the man's the head of the household in the same way that Christ is the head of the church. When it comes to rights, the men are the ones with the rights. The women are traded around and become parts of harems, and you can sell off your daughter as a slave. Paul didn't permit a woman to teach in church. I mean, that pretty much establishes a pecking order. Maybe a pecker order.
Well, yeah, of course. There's always an order. There is an order. There's,
Why?
the head of everything.
So according to the Bible, women would be at least marginally inferior to men, right? Do you buy that?
We don't buy that, just so you know.
Don's gay. According to the Bible,
be killed.
He should be killed. Are you okay with that?
No, actually, I'm a trans woman, so no, I don't.
Okay. Boy, I'm scratching my head here.
I wonder where trans women fit on that biblical pecking order. Because I'm pretty sure that from those archaic standpoints about men wearing women's clothes, which is, by the way, I'm talking about what the Bible says, not me, you're a woman, I'm cool with all of that. I support all of your rights, which makes me infinitely superior to the book that you're apologizing for. But anybody who did a literal reading of the book that you're advocating for would put you even lower than cis women, and then of course anybody who's slaves is lower than that. I mean, this is the thing is what Don's talking about. If you start going this pecking order, and you're doing it all without any justification other than, well, this is my interpretation of the Holy Book.
It's an interpretation, I believe, that I have been steered to by God, essentially.
Okay. I don't see how anybody. I mean, I'm glad that. No, actually, I'm not glad. I really don't know what to say, because you think that you've been steered a certain direction by God, and this is something that you can't demonstrate, and I don't even know how you came to that conclusion,
and
that
it's
it was
not even
God
to your
steering
advantage.
you. How did you determine that it's not you steering you?
I guess I can't really say that I have proof for that. I mean, that's where my faith comes in, and like I said at the beginning, I admit to, a certain amount of faith, and yeah, that might be irrational, but
for me, it's all about caring whether or not my beliefs are likely to be true. And so I can't believe something unless there's not good reason. And as soon as I recognize that faith isn't a good reason, then I can no longer use faith to prop up what I believe. I actually have to come up with good reasons. And when it comes to Christianity, when it comes to the Bible, when it comes to Islam, when it comes to any of the religions, not only do I not have any good reason to believe they're true, I'm not even convinced if they were true, they would be good things, because they advocate for so many terrible things within the holy books. And we know that religiosity doesn't make anyone a better person. And I'd much rather deal with the world here and now, and how we interact and get along, and how we're going to make sure that people get equal rights, and that people are treated fairly under the law, and that no religion, even if it were actually correct about some supernatural realm or what happens in an afterlife, should ever get preferential treatment over any other or irreligion.
Yeah, I advocate for, interfering with government and all that. In fact, I stay away from government because I don't believe that my beliefs should be dictated. So I separate myself from politics completely because of that. And I don't believe in pushing my religion on other people, trying to force other people into my religion. But it is my purpose still to, spread the good news. That's part of, what I feel I've been commissioned to do. And that's,
Cool.
all about spreading the word, and it's not about proving anything. Proof is with God. I can't do that.
Well, I mean, you can give the reasons. You can follow 1 Peter 3:15 and give the justifications. Whether or not you're successful at proving it's different. But really quickly, because I'm going to move on to some other callers, what is it that you think is the good news, as briefly as you can?
The kingdom of God. It's all about proving, Satan was a liar when he called into question God's sovereignty, his right to rulership. So God's answer to that ultimately is going to be his kingdom, and that's where proof is going to be available to everybody.
So you can't talk about, so the good news is that you're convinced that something better will happen some other time because Satan, who told the truth in the myth, was actually lying.
Yeah, I believe that good news is right around the corner. I know you don't accept natural, and you were just talking about the natural occurrences like earthquakes and stuff. But there's a storm brewing, with Trump and everything. I believe that everything is starting to come to a head, and things are going to shift drastically in the near future.
Okay. Thanks for no offense, but you hear those sort of vague predictions every single year from all sorts of people. And so basically you've called in to say you're convinced that the good news is that something better is coming that you can't demonstrate.
I mean, yeah, essentially. And for what it's worth, whoever picks up on that, God will, I believe, latch on to those seeds and do what he needs to ultimately, the ultimate reason why he interferes at all with the system, because if he interferes too much, it's essentially him corrupting the data, and it's God's purpose that this experiment not happen again. So
that's garbage. That's like a parent saying, I'm not going to do any parenting because that might corrupt the data. The fact is that a God could demonstrate to every single person on the planet that he clearly exists and what his intentions are, and not actually force anybody to follow along. Do you believe you seem to believe that there's a Satan, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so do you also believe the mythology that would say that Satan was one of God's angels?
Yes.
Yeah, so Satan, in your view, knows absolutely about God's power and who he is and what he wants, and still chose to rebel. So that means there can be no problem with a God revealing himself to all of us. We would still have every opportunity to rebel.
And he's going to do that.
Well, when he does, call back. Thanks.
Okay.
God's going to reveal himself. What the fuck is taking so long? Jesus.
A home state call. We've got, is it Jerikia in Killeen, Texas?
It's Jerikiah.
Jerikiah, I'm sorry. I don't even know if they spelled that right. Does it have a K or a CH? Forget it, it doesn't matter.
Jerikiah.
Hi, Jerikiah.
How are you? Hi, how are y'all doing? Pretty good, thank you.
Good, thanks. What's up?
Hey, so I had a question about your worldview.
Mm-hmm.
I was just curious, from a theistic perspective, being a non-denominational Christian, I'm just curious, how come atheists don't actually practice or live out their worldview?
I do not know what you mean. We're going to have to get more specific.
Atheists per se don't have a worldview. Each individual person, each person does, but there's not one atheist worldview that 100 million atheists share.
Right. Atheism is one perspective on one topic that maybe informs the rest of our thinking, but does not determine everything else that we think.
Was there a specific thing?
Phil and I are really geeky about math, and a lot of atheists are not.
Is there a specific?
I mean, but atheists can't answer the 4 most important questions about life philosophically.
Important is subjective.
And even if they can't, doesn't mean we're wrong.
What are the 4 most important questions about life? I'm biting.
It would be origin, meaning, morality, and destiny. And I even beg to differ. Atheists.
Those aren't questions.
Humanity, no hope.
Dad, I didn't hear a question mark.
Yeah.
Can you give us one question to start with?
So from a philosophical perspective, can you prove to me the origin and the historical evidence of why somebody would be an atheist when they contradict their own worldview within the frame they live?
Okay, you're back to the first question that I didn't understand.
I think was that a question? I think it was.
Well,
it was a bad question.
The question was, can you?
But I think it's a loaded question.
Since I didn't quite understand the question, I'm just going to say no. Next.
Okay,
can you dumb things down for us a little? Because we're just simple-minded atheists.
Yeah, I apologize because
Okay.
I thought Christians couldn't be logical like atheists.
Well,
that's what you
I
think.
guess.
Because the origin of life. I mean, how do you even explain the Big Bang Theory? Well, what I find hysterically funny is how atheists reject the evidence we have of Scripture and the manuscripts that are passed down from generations, and yet they deny the God of the Bible, but yet they can't even prove millions of years ago what happened.
Okay.
Do you know why? Okay. Do you know why scientists, and I'm not talking about atheists, but just cosmologists in general, have concluded that there was a Big Bang?
Yeah, in the beginning, God spoke.
No, that's not why cosmologists have concluded that. That's why you have. But the concept of a Big Bang wasn't around 100 years ago. So do you understand where people came to that conclusion in the first place?
Yeah, through science.
Okay.
I like that.
Can you be more specific, though? I mean, was it biology? There are a lot of topics that science covers. All right, so let me help you out a little bit. When you look at light, so you know how light can appear at different colors depending on the wavelength of light. Are you with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So if things that have longer wavelengths look red to us, and if they're even longer than that, then we can't see them because they're infrared and beyond. Things that have very short wavelengths look blue or purple to us, and if they're too short, then we can't see them either because our eyes don't work that way. But what scientists have observed is that when things are moving very quickly, like close to the speed of light, or maybe not all that close. By the way, my dad is a physicist, and he's sitting in the audience right now, and I feel his eyes on me. Sorry I didn't stick with the physics classes, Dad. I'm doing my best. When things are moving quickly, they experience a shift toward the red.
If they're moving away.
Yes, they're moving away. Because even though the wavelength of the light doesn't change, their motion relative to you seems to be longer. What scientists observed was that if you look out at any point in space, everything is a little bit more red-shifted than you would expect it to be based on what we know about the composition of stars. And from this, they concluded that everything in the universe is moving away from us very rapidly.
And the farther away, the more rapid.
Yes. The farther away things get, the more rapid they are. And that is consistent with going back into the past and finding that at one point, everything was locally existing within the same small area, and things were expanding from there. Now, does the Big Bang say what happened at the start of that? No. Do we know what that is?
The Bible
we have
does.
some. Okay. How do you know that?
Where in the Bible does it say Big Bang?
Yeah, the Bible does not say Big Bang. This is something that Christians have just latched onto since it was discovered by other people.
Because more than 100 years ago, Christians argued that the fact that the universe was finite was supported in the Bible.
No.
Yes.
Yes, they did. Okay. You may think that they were mistaken and they were misreading the Bible, but they did argue that a long time ago.
No, I believe you. I'm not saying they didn't argue.
Well, you
that,
said
but
no.
that doesn't
You
mean
did
they
say
were
no.
right.
But did that explanation make sense to you? Because you're asking why do atheists believe in the Big Bang, and I gave you the answer. Is that a sensible conclusion?
Well, what caused the Big Bang?
We don't know.
Don't know.
And sometimes
God.
I don't know is the right answer.
No, God is the answer.
How do you know?
I don't need to know.
Well, there you go. Why are you asking how I know something if you have no idea what you're talking about?
And we actually want it to be true, not just because you believe it. Can you support what you believe?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And let's try that for a change.
Sure.
Okay. I mean, everything you said is scientifically, science. I mean, what does science mean? It just means knowledge, epistemology and
Is this
stuff
part
like
of
that.
your evidence, or are you dodging the question?
No, I'm not dodging the question. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and God said, "Let there be light."
How do you know that?
I don't need to know that. How do you know that?
Okay. Why are we talking then? If you don't feel like there's anything that you have to tell us that's useful information because you don't know it or need to, then why did you call?
You said you have evidence and then you don't provide any. Why is that?
Well, the evidence is in the Bible itself.
Yeah, but we don't believe the Bible.
That's fine. I don't believe in atheism.
Okay. Well, then, good chat. Next.
So, do you have evidence or not?
Yeah, prophecy alone proves the divinity of God.
Oh, so you do think that's evidence?
Oh, yeah, it's sufficient.
Okay. Hit me with your favorite prophecy. Make it a good one.
Isaiah 53.
Uh-huh.
The book of Isaiah was written 700 years before the Messiah.
Give us the prophecy.
Yeah. Could you tell us what it says and what happened?
If you read Isaiah, the book of Isaiah was written 700 years before Christ even came. Jesus came AD 1. The prophet Isaiah prophesied of the suffering servant, which even Orthodox Jews understand this passage to be a messianic prophecy. And if you read the entire chapter, no other person in history has fulfilled this but Jesus Christ.
There have been no other suffering servants in history?
Not that, no, people have suffered, but they do not fulfill every single verse in this chapter like Jesus does.
Like what?
I mean, if you read verse 3, he's despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows.
Oh, okay. Good thing Jesus was the only despised and rejected person.
Yeah.
That is an amazing prophecy. And remember, I asked you to bring your favorite one, and that was the first one that you came up with.
Now, I have a question for you as far as the Bible. When people wrote the books of the New Testament, were they able to read the Old Testament?
Were they able to read the Old Testament? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So when someone wrote books or stories to put in what became the New Testament, they could read what was previously written.
Yes.
Change the story to fulfill what was written before.
No, not at all.
They couldn't?
Well, I think I could do that if I read an old Batman story. I can incorporate some of those themes into a new Batman story.
I guess I am a more creative author than those guys, because I could totally write you a Messiah story right now that fulfills the prophecies better.
No, what you don't understand is this was written 700 years before Christ even came.
That is a really long time to be able to come up with a story that fits it.
And no one else in history fulfills that prophecy.
No one else?
No one?
You
so
know every
far
single
you've
human?
told us that there is a suffering servant, okay? I think most servants suffer. And what was the other one? He was despised. Maybe he was a douchebag.
No, maybe he's just fulfilling prophecy because you're actually rejecting him as well.
I reject the Easter bunny
Wow,
as well.
what? Okay, so if I accepted him, then the call would be over because you'd be like, well, yeah, you accept him, good job. If I don't accept him, then obviously it's true because not accepting him proves that he's fulfilling the prophecy. That's pretty weak.
No, it's pretty strong. I would.
Okay, if you say so.
Pretty safe, because there's prophecies in the Bible that are fulfilled, and only Christ could fulfill those prophecies.
All right, so
And like I said,
so
if
he
you
was a
actually-
suffering servant and he was despised. What else?
If you keep going down to verses 5, it says, "But he was wounded for our transgressions, and he was bruised for our iniquities."
I don't accept that happened.
He was crucified. It's historically proven. What are you talking about?
For our transgressions? There are a million stories in movies and literature about people getting hurt for other people.
Yeah, but what you don't understand is that you're not even opening your mind to the possibility.
Oh no, you are
studied it for
assuming
yourself.
the validity of the story that you're trying to prove to us, and so
Because I
you
know
are
it's true.
How? How do you know it's true?
Because
If you would
Jesus
share this
literally
with us, what? If you would share this with us, then maybe it would be convincing. But all you're doing is pointing to aspects of the story that we're not finding convincing.
Well, I don't understand how you don't see how he fits the prophecy. If you read it and you know anything about Jesus, he's the only one in history that fulfilled this prophecy from Isaiah chapter 53, verse 1, all the way to verse 12.
I don't like to crib off other atheist experience hosts, but I do, on occasion, enjoy Matt's comment, which is, if I order a steak and the waiter brings it to me, did he fulfill my prophecy?
No, because that wasn't thousands of years ago.
Oh, what if I order a steak last year and it comes to me this year?
Actually, I think ordering a steak and it coming immediately is a better fulfillment of the prophecy. Because, I mean, that guy was at least timely. If all you're doing is saying there's going to be an earthquake, and then 1,000 years down the road there's an earthquake, that doesn't really count as me predicting that earthquake, right?
Well, I mean, that's fine. You have an opinion. You know, you have your own, but you're entitled to your own opinion.
Does it? What do you think about Nostradamus?
Nostradamus?
Yeah.
He made predictions.
Yeah, and a lot of people said he specifically predicted 9/11, for example. He didn't, but a lot of people said he did and retrofitted a lot of stuff in the actual story to match the things that they thought he was saying. Have you heard that one?
Yeah, but that is irrelevant to the scriptures.
Well, how about this for a different topic? The Bible promotes slavery. Are you pro-slavery?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
All right. Well, then you're not a very good Christian.
That's not true, because if you read Exodus chapter 21, the Hebrew word for slavery is ebed, actually. And if you go back 4,000 years ago, every single nation had slaves. And number one,
so that makes it okay. That's nice.
No,
that's nice.
No, I didn't say that it was okay. That's not what I'm saying.
It is what you said.
God said it was okay.
God said it was okay because he doesn't know better.
Do you know better than God?
Do I know better than God? No, I would never.
Then why is slavery wrong?
Why is slavery wrong?
Why didn't God know slavery was wrong?
God could have mentioned it. I mean, you know, he had a lot of really, really detailed things about, like, not eating milk and meat, or not bathing a calf in its mother's milk.
Thou shalt not roast a goat in its mother's milk.
That's the one. I think it was calf. But, I mean, he had a whole lot of specific things to say that may have been unpopular at the time. Did he just forget to bring up slavery, or what?
No, not at all. And, you know, I deal with this a lot, actually, with a lot of atheists. And, I mean, it's understandable. I understand why you propose that objection against the Bible. But
it's pretty rational.
Regardless, there was slavery in that time. And God told Moses, this is how slavery is actually...
God was not one to buck social convention, is that it? God was afraid he'd get too many thumbs down on Twitter or something. Or no, Twitter doesn't have thumbs down, but too many angry faces on Facebook. That's what I meant.
So as long as you beat your slave and they survive a day or two, you're okay with that?
That's actually you're quoting from Exodus 21, and actually if you have to study it more, you can't just pick and choose that one verse, because what exactly you're referring to is in Exodus 21, talking about slavery, verses 1 through 2. Now these are the judgments which thou shalt set before them, thou by a Hebrew servant. 6 years shall he serve, and all that stuff. And it says, if a man smite the, verse 26, if a man smite the eye of his servant, or the eye of his maid, that it perish, he shall let him go free for his eye's sake. So
the part about striking him so hard that as long as he lives a day or two, there's no punishment at all. That's fine. Because there's other stuff in the Bible that says other things.
No, not at all. Because if he did that, it would be done back to him.
No.
The whole Mosaic law.
Not according to that part of the Bible.
Okay, but what I'm showing you is that, number one, you cannot compare slavery in the Bible to slavery that was in the world.
Oh, cool. Can I own slaves now then?
But you just said slavery was in every country. You compared it to the world.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Good.
So
we win.
They had freedom and liberty on certain days to do whatever they did, and if they served their time, they would go out for free.
Oh, good. Can I own slaves now?
No, because
Why?
of the old covenant, which is done away.
Well, Jesus said that he didn't come to change the old covenant. He came to fulfill it.
Not one jot or tittle of the law.
Exactly. He came to fulfill it. That means it's been inaugurated.
So
you have to read Jeremiah 31, where the prophet said that he's going to make a new covenant with the house of Israel and the house of Judah.
At what point did Jesus say that it's not okay to own slaves anymore?
At the point that he never owned a slave and none of his disciples did.
Okay, well, Jesus never got married either. Is it no longer okay to get married?
No, the Bible says to be married to a man.
And the Bible says to own slaves.
Jesus didn't have slaves, so based on your
Jesus
logic,
didn't comment on the slaves.
No man should ever marry a woman. That's your argument.
See, no, it's not my argument. What I'm trying to say, if you give me time to say it, is that what you don't understand is covenant in the Bible.
Okay, I guess I don't.
Yes, if you read the prophet Jeremiah chapter 31, verse 31, he says that the covenant that I'm making with the house of Israel and Judah, which Christ fulfills, is the fulfillment. Jesus is the fulfillment of the old covenant. That means we no longer live according to the old covenant. We live according to the new covenant. That's why you don't see slavery in the New Testament.
Why can't I keep owning slaves, though? It didn't tell me not to.
Because it was fulfilled. Christ fulfilled the law.
So do the Ten Commandments still apply?
Yes, that's the moral law. Because
that was in the Old Testament.
Those were fulfilled.
Yeah.
I guess I can dishonor my father and mother now, because Jesus fulfilled the honoring of the father and mother, and so I get to do what I want.
No, please listen to me, okay? You're talking about two different laws. The law of Moses is not the law of God.
How do you know the different laws?
We're just trying to find the difference.
Is it written which book is
on stone tablets?
Okay, so Moses is a higher authority than God.
Is it the 42 rules or the 10 that only stuck?
It's just the 10.
So the first
by the moral law of God.
The first commandments that Moses got that he smashed, those don't count?
No, because they had broke the commandments by worshiping a false golden calf.
Golden calf?
Oh, that's why he went
I don't remember
down
saying
there,
calf. I remember idol.
Golden calf, yeah.
Is it calf?
Brandon in Phoenix, how are you?
Yeah, hey Matt, how are you?
It says here, can I mention what the call screener note was?
Yeah, go for it.
Brandon wants to present evidence of God and guarantees this will be the best show ever if his call is taken this time. Wow. Wow. We're in awe, man. Go for it.
Well,
I cede the floor.
Well, let me start by just kind of to stage things. Let me ask you if for example, I had buried $30 million worth of gold, and I approached you with the proposition that if you help me dig up this gold, which I've stamped to prove that it's my gold, it's got my name on it and all of that, and I guaranteed you that you were going to get 30% of the take for helping me dig it up, would you want me to draw up a contract to our agreement?
Yes.
Now, why would you want me to draw up a contract?
Because it has legal protection in the case that you try to screw me on the deal after.
So basically, I mean, in short, so that the story doesn't change after we dig up the gold, right?
I suppose you can phrase it that way, sure. But the real thing is that I'm not as concerned.
I can't come back and I only told you 5%, not 30%.
Sure, yeah, okay, well, that's a version of the story. I'm just saying that I would do it because there's legal protection there to keep me from getting screwed.
Right. So,
but before I grab a shovel, you're going to have to actually demonstrate that the gold's real, because I'm just going to, basically I would
well, that was
probably
my next
also.
point is you have no idea if I actually buried anything, so you'd kind of have to take my word on faith.
No, because the contract.
I actually buried.
No, I don't have to take your word on faith for anything, because the contract would be written in such a way that if you have 30 million in gold and you're going to give me 30% of it, well, let's just say 10 million to make the math easier. You got 30 million in gold, and if I help you dig it up, I'm going to get 10 million in gold. What's going to happen is you're going to guarantee me payment of $10 million for digging X amount, because I'm not just going to keep digging holes with you forever. There's going to be a description of what the actual job is and what the payment's going to be, and an agreement. It doesn't matter then whether or not you actually have gold, because I'm either getting my money or I'm going to take everything you've got, suing you afterwards for breach of contract. And now I don't have to believe your story.
You're a smart business guy, and I mean, I would like to state that, intellectually, I think you absolutely dwarf me. If you and I took an IQ,
that doesn't matter.
I mean, you would absolutely have a higher IQ than I do. So, but
I don't care about IQ.
The one thing I've got on my side is actual wisdom, being in the truth.
And see, I would say that wisdom.
Conversation.
I would say that wisdom is exactly the sort of thing that would make you design the sort of contract that I'm doing, because wisdom is about lessons learned and having an understanding of reality. That would be wisdom. IQ doesn't matter. You could have 80 points lower IQ than me, but if you've learned the lesson about how to not get screwed, you can still write the same contract. So I would say that is wisdom. Wouldn't you say it's a wise contract?
Contract is simply that, we put things in writing so that the words can't change. So that's, kind of why, the Old Testament and the New Testament is also referred to as the Old Covenant and the New Covenant.
Yeah, it's curious. It's curious that
as to why.
Go ahead.
The God that I'm trying to prove, why he put everything in writing is so that the story can't change.
How do you know God put everything in writing?
Why did he need to amend it?
Well, as far as, the purpose of amending it is, ultimately in the Old Testament, he told the Jews that I bring you a curse this day, that the law is a curse to them. So, and this is also why Jesus said salvation comes through the Jews. He's going to use these people who, went with Moses out of Egypt.
Can we stop preaching and move to the proof of God?
We complete. So first of all, you're supposed to be presenting proof of God. And second of all, this notion of we write things down so they can't change, that's separate. But
well, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna circle back around to that. So, but
I guarantee you're going to do a lot of circling, because it's already you're beginning with essentially a circular argument that we need to rely on the Bible because it is the words that were written down so it couldn't change. And yet the issue is, how do you know that anything in the Bible is true and accurate with respect to what you're going to claim about God?
Well, let me start here. As far as all over 75% of all scholars and historians can agree that Jesus of Nazareth was a real person.
Well, okay, so first of all, 93% of all statistics are pulled right out of somebody's ass at the time that they need to use them. But the percentage of percentage of people who believe that Jesus was real is irrelevant to whether or not he was real. And even if everybody believed that Jesus was a real person, that doesn't mean that we have evidence that he was divine or God. I believe there were lots of real people.
I agree. As far as that's not proof yet. That
so everything you said is irrelevant to the point of demonstrating that God exists. That's my point.
Okay. Well, and we do know that he was crucified.
Well, we know that the Bible claims that he was crucified. It's not that we have any evidence of a crucifixion outside of the Bible. We don't even have any evidence.
Modern scholars
we don't
all agree. Brandon. Oh my God.
We don't. Oh my God. Brandon. 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 Oh my God. 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 Br
No, we don't. No, we don't. And modern scholars don't actually agree on that. What they agree is there are stories about this. The truth is we have no contemporary accounts of any event from Jesus' life at all, which is why there are some people who think this is entirely a myth. I'm not making that argument. But if you're just going to come on here and say, oh, 75% of scholars agreed that he was a person, and most modern scholars agree that he was crucified, none of that matters, because let me just concede for the sake of this argument, Brandon. Let's just assume I believe Jesus existed and was crucified.
Okay.
I don't actually believe that's the case.
Your debate that you did between Bart Ehrman and Bob Price. So I mean,
I wasn't involved in
Bart
that.
Ehrman,
They had the debate. I'm saying, for the purposes of this discussion right here, let's just pretend that I believe that Jesus existed and that he was crucified. Neither of those things, neither of those have any relevance, any bearing on whether or not there's a God.
Well, I mean, but he claimed that he was God, and that's why he was.
So what? Okay.
I agree.
Brandon, were there other people who were killed for heresy? Were there other people who went around claiming they were God? Okay, so were those people God?
No.
Okay, so doesn't that mean this is irrelevant, that somebody claimed they were God and were killed for it?
Well, I mean, I'm getting to that because, see, I mean, God did something very...
You've got to get to it a lot better than just starting... You've got to get to this a lot better than just starting with a parade of things that are irrelevant. What is the proof for the evidence that God exists?
He did. The proof that he provided us to prove his claim that he was God is, number one, prophecy in the Bible. And then number two is the fact that, the works that he did, the miracles that he did that convinced all of these other people that, this is, not a normal person can't do these things. A normal
I agree.
Just
I agree.
Dead.
I agree. Now, please demonstrate that he actually did any of the things that are reported.
Well, if you, I'm just going to give you the elevator version.
Why don't you give us the best one? Why don't you give us evidence? Because it says here that you're going to present evidence, and you presented nothing but claims. So present evidence. Do you even know what evidence is?
Yeah, let me get there. As far as, we do know the scholars all agree that the book of Daniel was written between 603 and 606 BC. That's when that book was written. And in this, it was given the prophecy that the Messiah, Jesus, was going to come and enter into the streets of Jerusalem.
That's false.
In exactly 483 years.
Brandon, that's false. It doesn't say Jesus in Daniel.
Well, it says the Messiah.
Okay, but you said the Messiah, Jesus. You are dishonestly injecting Jesus into a potential prophecy here because you've already concluded that he does this. But if a book says our future Messiah will do this, does that mean that later on, if somebody does that they are in fact the Messiah?
Well, as far as, it's pretty accurate as far as...
No, that's not what I'm asking.
Book of Daniel.
I'm not asking. So here's a statement. Somebody makes a statement about a future event. If later on that future event comes true, what does that tell us about the prophecy?
That the prophet was absolutely true in what he was saying.
It tells us that they said something which came true. But does that mean that the prophet actually predicted this? Did they knowingly set up a scenario that they knew was going to happen?
Well, in the book of Daniel, the angel Gabriel came to Daniel and said, in 483 years, the Messiah is going to walk through the gates of Jerusalem and will be recognized as the Messiah. And then, and that's exactly 173,880 days.
So let's say
the day Jesus entered into Jerusalem.
So let's say Jesus Christ. Let's say that 3 days before Jesus entered Jerusalem, assuming that's actually what happened, did somebody have access to the book of Daniel at that time?
Absolutely, the Jewish people. They're historians. That's why God used them.
So if I go in to a restaurant and I order a steak medium rare, and I get a steak that's medium rare, have I made a prediction and the waiter fulfilled prophecy?
Well, that's a prediction. That's something, you know.
Prophecy is a
and
prediction.
are two different things.
No, they're not.
Things that are different.
No, they're
not.
not.
The same.
They're not the same. Prophecy and prediction are synonyms. You are saying this is going to happen in the future, and then it happens.
We're talking many, many years in the future.
What difference does that make?
The person that made the predictions died before the thing.
I'll tell you exactly what difference it makes. It means that there were 683 years for people to actively work towards that goal, knowing it was going to happen. If I say 1 year from today, somebody is going to give birth to a child, and they are going to name it Matt is Awesome. And a year to the day from now, somebody actually names their kid Matt is Awesome. Was that prophecy being fulfilled? Or was that somebody saying, hey...
The prophecy said that he would be called Emmanuel. They gave him the prophecy gave him Jesus.
Yeah, not Jesus, right? Not Jesus. In the New Testament, he's not referred to as Emmanuel.
The meaning of Emmanuel is God with us. To another way to prove that Jesus is God as he claimed.
So
that's what he said. That's why they killed him.
We have a number of big problems here. One is that you believe everything in the Bible.
Well, let me just say this. As far as I believe that the King James Bible is the only real Bible that fulfilled the prophecy given in Psalms 12.
And I'm assuming you're talking about
I'm assuming in the trash.
I'm assuming you're talking about the 1611 AV version only, right?
Correct. The standard authorized Cambridge edition Bible.
Well, that's the standard authorized Cambridge edition may not be the exact same thing as the 1611 authorized version. Is it?
Well, I mean, that's the real Bible.
Get your story straight.
You can take all the other Bibles and trash them.
Sure. Even the Bibles that was based on, that the interpretations came out of, even the Masoretic text and the Septuagint, you can chuck those in the trash.
We'll see.
What about the Dead Sea Scrolls? What about the Dead Sea? What about the Dead Sea Scrolls? You gonna chuck those in the trash too?
Absolutely.
Okay.
As far as this is where.
So Brandon, we're done. Brandon, you're a
cartoon, man.
Brandon, we're done. You have a ridiculous position. You have a ridiculous position. Here, no, I'm not holding on. You're holding on. You're on hold right now. I might bring you back. I might not. In 1611, a new version of the Bible was translated from a number of different texts. And your thing is, we can toss out all those things that it was based on and just go with this one. As if the Lord himself spoke English. As if these people who translated it have even a fraction of the understanding of the ancient languages and the context at the time as modern scholars do. That makes no sense. This is you not just cherry picking from the Bible, but cherry picking the Bible.
Well, I mean, I don't mean to, I'm not trying to cherry pick. I understand your point, and it's a good point. I'm just saying that, I mean, obviously, God, if God is God, then he's capable of speaking any language that he wants to.
Sure. Isn't he also capable of revealing himself to all of us right now?
He has. This is the point. This is where I'm...
No, he hasn't. God has never revealed himself to me. I can say that with confidence.
Or me.
Well, he's not going to physically reveal himself to you.
Can he not do that?
Because of our nature versus...
Can he do that? Can he do it or not?
Without destroying you? No.
Then how did he reveal himself to anybody else? How did he explain the Damascus Road experience? Isn't that a revelation directly to Saul?
Absolutely. And as far as...
And it didn't destroy him, did it?
This is,
did it destroy him?
Those are chosen vessels and
did it
specific...
Okay, look, oh my God, you're just making all kinds of excuses. I said, can God do this? And you said, not without destroying you. And then I pull up an example where you have to believe, because it's in your book, that God revealed himself to somebody without destroying. And now you come up with a post hoc rationalization that he was a chosen vessel. Can God make me a chosen vessel?
Of course, I think he has.
Why hasn't he?
If you actually...
Wait,
well then we're back to square one.
No.
Why doesn't he do it?
Because now you just said that you think God has made me a chosen vessel, but you said that God couldn't reveal himself to destroy without destroying me. And then when I asked what it would take, I would say, why could it happen to Saul? And you said because he was a chosen vessel. So if I'm a chosen vessel, then clearly God can reveal himself to me without destroying me, right? So the answer to my original question was yes, he can.
Sure, of course. I mean,
and yet he hasn't.
If you were to be an apostle, which their function has already been served, it's done.
So apostles have to believe before the revelation?
No, I mean, but see,
Okay, so then
apostles are different from prophets.
No, Brandon.
As far as
Brandon,
they set down doctrine.
Brandon,
Prophets tell
shut
you
up!
future events.
You're not following this. You've said I'm a vessel, and that God can reveal himself to me. And then when I say, why hasn't he? You say it's because I'm not an apostle. And I'm asking, do you have to be an apostle before that you get the revelation? And your answer is no. So it's irrelevant to why I haven't received the revelation yet. Don't you think that if God considers me a vessel and reveals himself to me, that perhaps I might become an apostle?
Well, no, because I mean the apostleship is already done. There won't be any more apostles.
So then God can't reveal himself to me because I can't become an apostle, right?
Well, no. He has he's
no, he hasn't.
Here on
no,
earth
he hasn't.
Right now, see,
Brandon.
Jesus.
Brandon. God has not revealed himself to me. Period. Full stop.
Well, let me explain how he's done this, except you just don't see it yet.
Oh my God, Brandon. How can it be possible that something has been revealed to you and yet you don't see it? That the process of revelation intrinsically includes the recognition of the observer. This is something different from, hey, there is evidence for something and you just haven't seen it yet, versus I have revealed this evidence to you and you don't see it.
Well, I mean, have you ever, like lost your glasses or something and they're just sitting right in front of your...
I'm constantly disappointed about these folks that say, hey, I've got proof of God, and they come on and nothing.
Have you lost your glasses? Yep. And you know what found them? Looking for the glasses. When it was revealed to me what their location was, by my eyes and my searching, not by some external spirit, I found my glasses. This sort of nonsensical, simplistic, hey, I lost my glasses, I prayed for help, and then I found my glasses. Okay, what did the prayer have to do with it? No.
Well, didn't Jesus prophesy that he'd be returning within a generation?
Not necessarily to put a time frame on it, but he said there are some standing here who will not taste death until all these things have come to pass, which can be interpreted that way, and it can be interpreted another way.
I'm pretty sure there's a quote where he says within a generation.
There are things about that within this generation, but that's
okay.
It's all subject to interpretation. It's a big mess.
It's a big mess.
But at the end of the day, this notion of prophecy, I've already done a video on prophecy. We've already talked about it over and over again. The fact that the book of Daniel says something that you look at events later and interpret them as if they fit them. I tell you what, instead of calling the atheist experience, go call the Jewish experience and explain to them why they're wrong to not recognize Jesus as the predicted Messiah. Because they believe in the prophecy, I don't. And you think the prophecy has been fulfilled, and they don't. So when the two of you sort out what's the actual truth about prophecy, then call back. And when you get atheists and Jews to say, yes, we agree this is prophecy and it was fulfilled, but we still don't believe in Jesus. Whatever. Here you're supposed to get extra credit for getting on the show, so you're welcome.
Yeah, we appreciate you taking our calls. We actually get an A in the class to get on.
You're going to get an A in the class just for calling into this show?
Yeah.
I already have problems with your school.
Yeah, wait. I mean, also, what school has an apologetics class? I mean, I'm all for critical thinking, but...
Christian school.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Is this a Christian high school?
Yeah.
No college, not even a Christian college, is going to give you an A for calling to talk to my dumbass.
No, it's high school.
I thought I went to a Christian high school. I didn't learn any apologetics. Oh, shit.
All right, so what do you got for us?
Well, we, in our apologetics class, the main point is just kind of not debating atheists, but just, the causality of how to not prove God's existence, but argue it,
Yeah.
So really I'm sure you hear this from almost every caller, but we just want to talk to you about objective truth and see what, your ideas on moral absolutes.
Oh, wait a minute. Those are two different topics.
Yeah, I was going to say. I was about to ask you to clarify the first one.
Yeah, we would need clarification on what you mean by objective truth, but morality is a separate issue. And I don't and you also said moral absolutes, and I don't advocate for moral absolutes. I advocate for objective morality that is situational.
Well, that's what we're saying. You know, we're taught that morals come from God and they're God breathed, and we just want to know how your explanation for the fact, you know, as a people race, there's only, you know, 0.0001% of people that think murder is okay, and those people are, you know, serial killers or
well,
so
maybe.
forth.
But here's the issue. Let's assume for a second, without getting off into all the complicated philosophical debates, let's assume that morality is in fact what God says. How do I know what God says?
Well, the idea is that you're created by God, so those morals are implanted in you through God and the Holy Spirit.
So first of all, we know that, I mean, you can pick an extreme example like murder, but you can pick other things where we disagree on what the moral condition is or what the moral resolution is. So there are lots of people who hold lots of different views. And if we want to figure out, like Jamie thinks this is right and I think it's wrong.
Yeah,
now,
murder.
Either one of us can claim